right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to LTMB Live. Let the madness begin. This is November 14th on a Thursday. We are broadcasting live on YouTube and Twitch and Periscope Live. So thank you to everybody that's joining us tonight. We have a lot of analysis to go through. Of course, most people know that yesterday, Wednesday, was the first day of the open public hearings concerning this impeachment inquiry of President Donald Trump. So there's lots of testimony that we have to get to. Ambassador Bill Taylor testified, as well as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State George Kent. So a lot to go through. Hope everybody's doing well. How you doing tonight, man? Good? Good?
It was a lot, man.
It was a lot, man.
It was a lot.
It was a lot to go through, man.
I didn't watch all of it, but I watched most of it, man. So
Yeah, man.
it was kind of like hard trying to keep up and take notes at the same time with what was going on, just trying to jot down what you thought was important.
Yeah.
What I thought was important.
A lot of it I just saw again today. Really.
Yeah. So when I went back through my notes, I was like, I don't remember taking half of these joints, man.
All right. So we got some audio is a little bit low. Okay. All right. Let's see what we can do about that. We're gonna have to run some tests, man. We are going to have to run some tests because the audio should not be low. How about that? How's that? Is that better? We used to have a problem with the audio being a little bit too high and it blaring, but now we got a problem with it being low, with no settings being changed either. So, all right, what about now? How's that? We'll try to speak up as well. I think I see the levels going up a little bit more. All right. Zach said that's good. We got a thumbs up. All right, let's get to it. All right, so yesterday, again, the first public hearings in the impeachment inquiry of President Donald Trump, and the first witnesses to testify, like I said earlier, was acting ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, and the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, George Kent. So we have already heard some of the testimony before. Of course, we have read and we have already discussed their opening statements when they were testifying behind closed doors throughout that process. So during this public hearing, it seems as though they read the same statement. There was a little bit of additional information. But we're going to try to go through this and try to be concise because there's a lot of clips. There are a few long clips, 4 minutes long, something like that. But, at LTMB, we try to be as thorough as we can be. And, that's just an effect of that, or a product of that. All right. So first we're going to get to, let's go to George Kent. And we're going to go through a few comments throughout his opening statement. Okay.
This year, in 2019, Ukrainian citizens passed the political torch to a new generation, one that came of age not in the final years of the Soviet Union, but in an independent Ukraine. Presidential and parliamentary elections swept out much of Ukraine's previous governing elite and seated 41-year-old President Zelensky, a cabinet with an average age of 39, and a parliament with the average age of 41. At the heart of that change mandate, 5 years after Ukraine's revolution of dignity, is a thirst for justice, because there cannot be dignity without justice. Without a reformed judicial sector that delivers justice with integrity for all, Ukrainian society will remain unsettled. Foreign investors, including American investors, will not bring the great investment needed to ensure that Ukraine's long-term prosperity is secured.
All right, so that statement is going to come into play a little bit later, but George Kent was essentially trying to tell people how things have changed in Ukraine. It's been a large point of conversation, especially from Republican Congress members. They are really focusing on the corruption of Ukraine and saying that it's endemic. just it's always there. It's just a natural state of being in Ukraine. So what George Kent is saying there is that a lot of things have changed. The new president, Zelensky, is seen as a reformer. He's a young guy as well. The parliament, young. Government, young. The whole thing is young. So we don't have many holdovers from that old period of time, which it was viewed as very corrupt.
That old period of time that featured a president that was ultimately indicted for treason.
Right.
So that whole regime is gone.
Right. And so not only is he saying this, but our government, well, I mean, he's a part of our government, but the State Department and the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, have certified that Ukraine has made several moves, several significant moves to rid the country of corruption. So we just want to put that out there because, like I said, it is going to become important as we, go through this analysis. So we're going to go back to George Kent, and here he's going to talk about Burisma, the natural gas company in Ukraine.
The pervasive and longstanding problem of corruption in Ukraine included exposure to a situation involving the energy company Burisma. The primary concern of the U.S. government since 2014 was Burisma's owner, Mykola Zlochevsky, whose frozen assets abroad we had attempted to recover on Ukraine's behalf. In early 2015, I raised questions with the Deputy Prosecutor General about why the investigation of Mr. Zlochevsky had been terminated, based on our belief that prosecutors had accepted bribes to close the case. Later, I became aware that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma. Soon after that, in a briefing call with the national security staff of the Office of the Vice President in February of 2015, I raised my concern that Hunter Biden's status as a board member could create the perception of a conflict of interests. Let me be clear, however, I did not witness any effort by any U.S. official to shield Burisma from scrutiny. In fact, I and other U.S. officials consistently advocated reinstituting a scuttled investigation of Zlochevsky, Burisma's founder, as well as holding the corrupt prosecutors who closed the case to account. Over the course of 2018 and 2019, I became increasingly aware of an effort by Rudy Giuliani and others, including his associates Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, to run a campaign to smear Ambassador Yovanovitch and other officials at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv. The chief agitators on the Ukrainian side of this effort were some of those same corrupt former prosecutors I had encountered, particularly Yuri Lutsenko and Viktor Shokin. They were now peddling false information in order to extract revenge against those who had exposed their misconduct, including U.S. diplomats, Ukrainian anti-corruption officials, and reform-minded civil society groups in Ukraine. During the late spring and summer of 2019, I became alarmed as those efforts bore fruit. They led to the ouster of Ambassador Yovanovitch and hampered U.S. efforts to establish rapport with the new Zelensky administration in Ukraine.
So that's a lot of information, but it's very important. He's setting the stage there, saying that focusing on Burisma, first of all, the concern was not board members of Burisma, but it was actually the owner of Burisma, a guy named Zlochevsky. So he became involved in a scheme, the owner, to shield himself. He was already involved in, self-dealing. He was a corrupt guy. That's what many believed. And in terms of the investigation into that company, he was able to shut that down. He was able to bribe a prosecutor, and that investigation went south. So as it relates to Giuliani now, and what is it, Lev and Parna, what was his name? The two Ukrainians.
Parna and
Lev, or is it Lev Parna? Or
no, it's Parna and I can't remember the last name.
But the two Ukrainians that have been arrested recently and that are tied to Rudy Giuliani, they were involved in this effort to take down the ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, and engaged in this smear campaign to get her out of there, and it ultimately worked. So like I say, it's very important. Lev Parnas, and Igor, Lev and Igor, exactly. Jeffrey's right, Giuliani's henchman. So like I said, I mean, it's very important to get that information out there. Again, this is just laying the foundation for what actually transpired throughout this whole period of time, and you know what exactly led to Marie Yovanovitch's firing, her ouster, and really what was the issue with Burisma, the company that Hunter Biden was working for, on the board of. He didn't talk about Hunter Biden because it wasn't about Hunter Biden. He talked about the company's owner. So that's very important to take away from all this.
I think that testimony is important, especially seeing as that is a narrative that Republicans have been floating as a distraction to Trump abusing his power.
Right.
I think it doesn't just speak to what knowledge he had about his concerns about what Giuliani was doing, about what Trump was doing, about the call. This kind of sets up a kind of counter narrative.
All right, so we're gonna go to Bill Taylor now, and we have a couple videos from Bill Taylor. This first video, I believe he's talking about Zelensky, and I believe this is the video where he's talking about Zelensky committing to the interview on CNN. I believe that is, yeah, I believe that's the, right. Or committing to the investigation. Maybe it's the same thing. All right, here we go.
The following day, on September 8th, Ambassador Sondland and I spoke on the phone. He confirmed that he had talked to President Trump, as I had suggested a week earlier, but that President Trump was adamant that President Zelensky himself had to clear things up and do it in public. President Trump said it was not a quid pro quo. I believe this was the same conversation between Ambassador Sondland and President Trump that Mr. Morrison had described to me on September 7th. Ambassador Sondland also said that he had talked to President Zelensky and Mr. Yermak and had told them that although this was not a quid pro quo, if President Zelensky did not clear things up in public, we would be at a stalemate. I understood a stalemate to mean that Ukraine would not receive the much-needed military assistance. Ambassador Sondland said that this conversation concluded with President Zelensky agreeing to make a public statement in an interview on CNN. Shortly after that call with Ambassador Sondland, I expressed my strong reservations in a text message to Ambassador Sondland, stating that my nightmare is that they, the Ukrainians, give the interview and don't get the security assistance. The Russians love it, and I quit. And I was serious.
He said, I quit.
Yeah.
He quit. Serious. And he was serious.
Because you remember, this is a guy that believes in a strong U.S.-Ukrainian relationship, and he told Secretary of State Pompeo that if U.S. policy towards Ukraine changed in any way to which it was a negative towards Ukraine, then he didn't want to be in that role, and he wouldn't be in that role, that he would leave. Again, we've talked about this before because we had already had his opening testimony. But again, it's a different thing to see him actually say the words and say that President Zelensky committed to the investigation, committed to actually announcing the investigation in a CNN interview. So again, all of this is setting the stage, but you know, the key figure in a lot of this is the ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, who he was communicating that quid pro quo, or that really, you don't really have to say quid pro quo, he was communicating that extortion attempt to the Ukrainians.
And according to Taylor, he was communicating that extortion attempt with President Trump.
Right.
According to what he said, his aide overheard.
All right, so that part is what we're about to get to now.
Last Friday, a member of my staff told me of events that occurred on July 26th. While Ambassador Volker and I visited the front, this member of my staff accompanied Ambassador Sondland. Ambassador Sondland met with Mr. Yermak. Following that meeting, in the presence of my staff, at a restaurant, Ambassador Sondland called President Trump and told him of his meetings in Kyiv. The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations. Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward. Following the call with President Trump, the member of my staff asked Ambassador Sondland what President Trump thought about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland responded that President Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden, which Giuliani was pressing for. At the time I gave my deposition on October 22nd, I was not aware of this information. I'm including it here for completeness. As the committee knows, I reported this information through counsel to the State Department's legal advisor, as well as to counsel for both the majority and the minority of this committee. It is my understanding that the committee is following up on this matter.
So that is the news, the breaking news from these proceedings. Much of this stuff, again, we already knew because of the opening statement. Again, there was some stuff that hadn't really been discussed, well, that we were not privy to because, of course, a lot of this testimony occurred behind closed doors, so we weren't privy to that. But the news of somebody overhearing President Trump on the phone with Ambassador Gordon Sondland talking about the investigations, that's new. So the staffer of Acting Ambassador Taylor's is named David Holmes, and he has already been in communication with Congress to testify before testify in these hearings. Not only that, today there were reports that there was actually a second staffer that overheard this conversation as well. Same time period, same restaurant. So I'm not sure what that individual's name is. I don't know if that has been released, but I don't know it as of right now.
Would you consider those individuals to have firsthand knowledge and firsthand accounts?
Yeah, I mean, if they used one of their senses to ascertain something, to figure something out, to receive some information, then yes, that's a firsthand account.
Now, Taylor mentioned reporting these concerns to the State Department, right? But he went to John Bolton first, and John Bolton told him, hey, okay, you're coming to me with this, now go through the proper channels, right? This cable to who?
That would be Pompeo.
And I think Taylor was purposeful in just saying the State Department. I think he was careful in that. He didn't want to name drop. But I thought it was interesting that he also mentioned, I think it was within this exchange, that it was the first cable of this type that he had sent in how many years? 50 years?
In all his career.
In all of his career, this is the first cable of this type that he sent, showing these type of concerns about what he was witnessing and in what he ultimately heard from his staffers.
Right. That's important. All right, so we're gonna hear a few comments from the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, and the ranking member, Devin Nunes, in different clips. So first we're gonna get to Adam, excuse me. First we're gonna go to Adam Schiff, and this is a few of his opening remarks.
The President's Chief of Staff confirmed Trump's efforts to coerce Ukraine by withholding aid. When Mick Mulvaney was asked publicly about it, his answer was breathtaking. "We do that all the time with foreign policy," he said. "I have news for everybody. Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy. That is going to happen." The video of that confession is plain for all to see. Some have argued in the President's defense that the aid was ultimately released, and that is true, but only after Congress began an investigation, only after the President's lawyers learned of a whistleblower complaint, and only after members of Congress began asking uncomfortable questions about quid pro quos. A scheme to condition official acts or taxpayer funding to obtain a personal political benefit does not become less odious because it is discovered before it is fully consummated. In fact, the security assistance had been delayed so long, it would take another act of Congress to ensure that it could still go out. And that Oval Office meeting that Zelensky desperately sought, it still hasn't happened.
Now that was new to me, that last part, that we knew that September 11th that the aid was released. We knew that part already. I did not know that it took another act of Congress because the aid had been held up so long. I didn't know that another act needed to be done so that the aid could, officially be released. So that was new. That was new and ridiculous too. So, like I said, a lot of this stuff we have already heard before. We have already addressed the comments that acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney made during that press conference, and saying get over it. There's going to be political influence when you're talking about aid.
Yeah, there's going to be policy differences.
Yeah,
but I think like Mulvaney stepped in it.
He did. He did, and he tried to walk it back. You can't walk that back.
I think Taylor mentioned something about that too. He actually said it's not unusual, I guess, to seek outside counsel and outside opinions in the formation of like public policy, whether it be domestic policy or foreign policy. Taylor said that's not actually unusual,
Right.
but he said it's unusual to have a private person's input that goes against U.S. policy.
Right. Official
U.S.
policy. Right. All right. So now we're going to get to the ranking member, Devin Nunes of the House Intelligence Committee, and his opening statement.
In a July open hearing of this committee following publication of the Mueller report, the Democrats engaged in a last-ditch effort to convince the American people that President Trump is a Russian agent. That hearing was the pivotal finale of a 3-year-long operation by the Democrats, the corrupt media, and partisan bureaucrats to overturn the results of the 2016 election. After the spectacular implosion of their Russia hoax on July 24th, in which they spent years denouncing any Republican who ever shook hands with a Russian, on July 25th, they turned on a dime and now claim the real malfeasance is Republicans' dealings with Ukraine. In the blink of an eye, we're asked to simply forget about Democrats on this committee, falsely claiming they had more than circumstantial evidence of collusion between President Trump and Russians. We should forget about them reading fabrications of Trump-Russia collusion from the Steele dossier into the congressional record. We should also forget about them trying to obtain nude pictures of Trump from Russian pranksters who pretended to be Ukrainian officials. We should forget about them leaking a false story to CNN while he was still testifying to our committee, claiming that Donald Trump Jr. was colluding with WikiLeaks. And forget about countless other deceptions, large and small, that make them the last people on earth with the credibility to hurl more preposterous accusations at their political opponents. And yet now, here we are. We're supposed to take these people at face value when they trot out a new batch of allegations. But anyone familiar with the Democrats' scorched earth war against President Trump would not be surprised to see all the typical signs that this is a carefully orchestrated media smear campaign.
Carefully orchestrated media.
Carefully orchestrated
media. What do you say? Media
campaign.
Media circus
campaign. There's so much in there. I don't think we can get through all of it.
No, we can't. No.
But like, all that actually doesn't matter. Like what he thinks about how the Democrats behaved in some other matters, that doesn't matter here. Whether he personally and whether Republicans personally see any validity in anything the Democrats have said about Donald Trump, or I guess the way they went after him in some other matter, is irrelevant here. And some of the stuff he mentioned, one in particular thing actually was true about Don Jr.'s coordination with WikiLeaks. His dumb ass actually tweeted it out.
Right.
He was exchanging emails with WikiLeaks, so that's actually true. And like, Devin Nunes says this whole Ukrainian thing is being forced upon him at face value. At face value. You know what face value means? Face value just means someone makes an allegation with nothing backing it up. Is that what we have here? No. We don't have this hearing going on right now because allegations coming forth about Donald Trump at face value.
No, it's not.
Vindman is not.
It's not just opinion. It's just not somebody telling you something. Hey, this is fact. I have nothing to back it up. You have to take me at face value.
Yeah, that's what face value is. So he doesn't actually either. Well, I think he knows the definition of face value. He's just trying to present this whole ordeal as something that has been started because of something the Democrats said. That was the point of him bringing up Russia. Like, that whole thing was just started because something the Democrats said. And they took us through all this, when in actuality, it was your own party that took you through all of that. Democrats had nothing to do with that investigation. That investigation was initiated by the Republican Party. Rosenstein is a Republican.
Right.
He pretty much employed a special counsel to investigate Donald Trump. And he also employed a fellow Republican to do that, and that's Robert Mueller.
But like you said, none of this matters. I understand that he has these negative feelings about the Democratic Party, and he feels like the Democratic Party were saying that Trump is guilty. They were certain that he was guilty, saying that there was evidence of his guilt concerning Russia, the Mueller investigation. Cool. That's all cool. But see, why that's not going to work and why it shouldn't work is because this isn't about the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party isn't saying you should believe me because. It's not about the Democratic Party. There are actual witnesses that are testifying, and somehow Devin Nunes is forgetting that. Or you know what? No, he's not forgetting that. He's ignoring that.
I'm about to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very willingly, he's ignoring that. Democrats are not on trial here. You don't see Democrats that are testifying. No, you see people that had some kind of affiliation with what was going on with this whole withholding of the aid and the effort to get Zelensky and Ukrainians to, I guess, announce these investigations. That's what we have going on here. It's not your ill feelings about the Democratic Party. You can have positive or negative feelings about the Democratic Party, but that has no bearing on what we're seeing play out right now. All right, so one more clip from Devin Nunes, and again, he's just doing too much to try to criticize the Democratic Party.
The witnesses deemed suitable for television by the Democrats were put through a closed-door audition process in a cult-like atmosphere in the basement of the Capitol, where Democrats conducted secret depositions, released a flood of misleading and one-sided leaks, and later selectively released transcripts in a highly staged manner.
A closed-door audition, cult-like process. Secretive process that he was actually included in because he's the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. So he was in on the secretive meeting.
Did he use the term basement?
He did.
He did term. So he made it seem like it was like some sort of like dungeon.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's why he used the word cult-like. So he was a part of that cult.
Yeah, he was.
So again,
ranking member.
Question is, why would he misrepresent those proceedings like that? Why? Why would he misrepresent those proceedings like that? If he is participating in this hearing to get down to the bottom of the truth and I guess present the American people with the truth, why would his opening statement contain falsehoods like that?
Because he thinks it's more prudent to attack the Democratic Party instead of actually dealing with the substance here. Because the substance does not lean in his or President Trump's favor. All right, so we're going to get to the actual question and answer portion of these hearings. First up, I think that's what we got. Yeah. So first up, both parties, Democratic and Republican, both had counsel present. So we're going to get to the Democratic Party's counsel, Daniel Goldman. And here he is questioning, well, you'll see.
Mr. Kent, is pressuring Ukraine to conduct what I believe you've called political investigations a part of U.S. foreign policy to promote the rule of law in Ukraine and around the world?
It is not.
Is it in the national interest of the United States?
In my opinion, it is not.
Why not?
Because our policies, particularly in promoting the rule of law, are designed to help countries, and in Eastern Europe and Central Europe, that is overcoming the legacy of communism. In the communist system, in particular, the Prosecutor General office was used to suppress and persecute citizens, not promote the rule of law. So in helping these countries reach their own aspirations to join the Western community of nations and live lives of dignity, helping them have the rule of law with strong institutions is the purpose of our policy.
So in other words, it is a purpose of our foreign policy to encourage foreign nations to refrain from conducting political investigations. Is that right?
Correct. And in fact, as a matter of policy, not of programming, we oftentimes raise our concerns, usually in private, with countries that we feel are engaged in selective political prosecution and persecution of their opponents.
Selective prosecutions. That's interesting. It would make sense that he would want to raise an alarm about what was going on, about what Trump was trying to arrange in the country of Ukraine.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to push back on, like, that's what he was talking about is a result of fascism and not communism. That's really the only thing I want to push back on. That's probably the only problem with that statement I have. But everything else is fine.
Yeah, and it's again, this is laying the foundation of what is permissible, what should be permissible, and what's not, and the Ukraine involving themselves in a political effort, getting into American politics at the request of even the President of the United States, not a good idea, not normal, not legal. All right, so we're going to go to the Republican Council now. Guy by the name of Steve Castor. Here's Steve Castor.
But from the president's perspective, if the ambassador, the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States, one of the most influential diplomats, is penning an op-ed, certainly with the okay of President Poroshenko, the DNC consultants are conferring with Ukrainian officials at the embassy. Former Prime Minister Yatsenyuk is saying things on social media. Interior Minister Avakov, who has spanned both the Poroshenko and the Zelensky realm, is also saying some very unkind things on social media about the president. You certainly can appreciate that President Trump was very concerned that some elements of the Ukrainian establishment were not in favor of him, did not support him, and were out to get him.
Now, William, why would that be? Is there a reasonable explanation as to why the Ukrainians or Ukrainian officials within the government didn't like Donald Trump? Is there a legitimate reason? Is there some sort of connection that Donald Trump has with the Ukraine?
Well, I know some statements that he made about, a certain territory before.
Oh, yeah.
Crimea.
Crimea.
Yeah, and talking about how Ukraine actually wanted Crimea to be annexed, and that didn't rub Ukrainians the right way.
There were journalists and there were individuals who were employed by Ukraine's anti-corruption bureau who were very offended by that and saw that situation as a very, a trying time for the country of Ukraine. Right. A desperate time for the country of Ukraine.
Because it was taken through force.
Right. But directly, you have Donald Trump's campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who, in the mind of a lot of Ukrainian officials, was a part of that. He lobbied on behalf of the former president, the former president that was ultimately indicted for treason.
Yeah, the one that's considered pro-Russian too.
One I was considered pro-Russian. So he's working for the interest of Russians. This is a person that Paul Manafort lobbied to get into office. Paul Manafort becomes Donald Trump's campaign manager. So it would make sense that people in Ukraine, not just the people, but the government would be like, yeah, that would be bad for us if Donald Trump won. That would be bad for us.
Now, I understand what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. But you know what all this is? This is a personal gripe for Donald Trump. This is not a gripe for the United States of America. Again, this is a personal gripe. Everything that Steve Castor was listing were things that Trump would feel personally hurt by or personally offended by. Oh, the Ukrainians don't like me. You're penning these articles or they're saying these things in the media. They don't like me. That has nothing to do with like their official dealings with the United States of America. That has nothing to do with why there would be a reasonable need for you to, or President Trump to pull the security assistance from Ukraine. That has nothing to do with it. This is just a personal gripe of President Donald Trump. And so for this attorney, this counsel to focus on why President Donald Trump's feelings would, be hurt by what he saw from several figures in Ukraine, that has no bearing, again, on this process.
Well, you know what the underlying suggestion here is, because he mentioned the DNC. He's trying to suggest that there was an operative from the DNC that worked with the Ukrainian officials to release this information about Donald Trump and leak it to the media. Therefore, Donald Trump was being hurt. This sets the stage for the whole Ukrainians, I guess, meddling in the election. That is supposed to be setting the stage for that narrative.
Even though there's no evidence of that. Actually, the only evidence suggests that it was Russia. The only evidence suggests that it was Russia. Not only did Barack Obama's intelligence community said that, but this current president, Trump's intelligence community, has said that as well.
And it's not that we're saying like we wholeheartedly believe that and everything surrounding that.
I'm just talking about evidence.
Yeah, we're just talking about what transpired and who was the president at the time and what they claim happened and what is essentially readily accepted information by both parties.
Right.
That's what we're trying to establish here. Whether we believe it or not, that's not the point.
But
it's just that
the
it's
notion
out there.
that it's Ukraine, though, is a conspiracy theory because there's nothing to sustain that. All right, so this is going to be more from counsel Steve Castor. In this video, he is trying to connect the dots from Burisma to Hunter Biden.
The company Burisma, its leader, Zlochevsky, he has a little bit of a storied history of corruption, doesn't he?
Mr. Zlochevsky was Minister of Energy from 2010 and 2012 under the pro-Russian government, and he used his regulatory authority to award gas exploration licenses to companies that he himself controlled. That would be considered an act of corruption in my view, yes.
And certainly self-dealing.
Certainly self-dealing and self-enriching.
And how did the Ukrainian government ultimately pursue that?
In the spring of 2014, the Ukrainian government, the new government after the Revolution of Dignity, turned to partners, particularly the US and the UK, to try to recover tens of billions of dollars of stolen assets. The first case that we tried to recover that money came from Mr. Zlochevsky. The Serious Crimes Office in the UK had already opened up an investigation. They worked with us and the Ukrainian authorities to develop more information. The $23 million was frozen until somebody in the General Prosecutor's Office of Ukraine shut the case, issued a letter to his lawyer, and that money went poof.
So essentially paid a bribe to make the case go away.
That is our strong assumption, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, at any point in time, has anyone in the Ukrainian government tried to reinvestigate that, or did those crimes just go unpunished, and was he free to go?
Mr. Zlochevsky spent time, as far as I understand, in Moscow and Monaco after he fled Ukraine. We continued to raise as a point of order that because U.S. taxpayer dollars had been used to try to recover frozen assets, that we have a fiduciary responsibility, and we continued to press Ukrainian officials to answer for why alleged corrupt prosecutors had closed a case and we have, till now, not gotten a satisfactory answer. So, to summarize, we thought that Mykola Zlochevsky had stolen money. We thought a prosecutor had taken a bribe to shut the case, and those were our main concerns.
And are you in favor of that matter being fully investigated and prosecuted?
I think since U.S. taxpayer dollars were wasted, I would love to see the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office find who the corrupt prosecutor was that took the bribe and how much it was paid. And that's what I said to the Deputy Prosecutor General on February 3rd, 2015.
But in addition to prosecuting the person that took the bribes, shouldn't the organization or individual that sponsored the bribes be prosecuted?
I would agree that the Ukrainian law authorities should uphold the rule of law and hold people account for breaking Ukrainian law.
So this company, Burisma, involved in lots of criminal activity, correct?
I do not know that.
But over the years, it's been involved in a number of questionable dealings, correct?
I would say that it's the largest private gas producer in the country, and its business reputation is mixed.
So to the extent a new regime is coming in under President Zelensky, it certainly would be fair for the new prosecutor, a genuine prosecutor, to re-examine old crimes that hadn't sufficiently been brought to justice, right?
I believe that the new Prosecutor General, Ruslan Rybashapka, made a statement to that end that they would be reviewing past cases. But keep in mind, this is a country where those that commit crimes generally never get held to account, so there's a lot to review.
Okay, now this, the bribe was paid in what year?
To the best of my knowledge, the case against Zlochevsky, the former minister, was shut down December of 2014.
Okay, and right around that time, Burisma starts adding officials to its board, is that correct?
Understanding is, yes, that Zlochevsky invited a series of new individuals to join the board in 2014.
And do you know what his strategy was in adding officials to his board?
I have never met Mr. Zlochevsky.
Okay, and who are some of the folks he added to the board?
The most prominent person he added to the board was the former president of Poland, Aleksander Kwaśniewski.
And anyone else?
There were a number of others, including some Americans, and the most prominent one in this context is Hunter Biden.
Okay, so Hunter Biden's added to the board of Burisma. Now, do you think that creates a problem that Burisma may be adding people to its board for protection purposes?
Sir, I work for the government. I don't work in the corporate sector, and so I believe that companies build their boards with a variety of reasons, not only to promote their business plans.
Was Hunter Biden a corporate governance expert?
I have no idea what Hunter Biden studied at university or what his CV says.
Like, is he the Jeffrey Sonnenfeld of the Ukraine?
I have no awareness or knowledge of what his background was and what he may have done on the board of Burisma.
So you don't know whether he has any business experience in Ukraine prior to joining Burisma's board?
I've heard nothing about prior experience.
Okay.
No.
Do you know if he speaks Ukrainian?
I do not.
Do you know if he possesses any other element other than the fact that he is the son of, at the time, the sitting vice president?
I do not.
Interesting.
That was a lot of testimony, okay? That's one of the longest videos that we have. That was a lot of... So, to wrap that up, okay? The Republican counsel, Steve Castor, is trying to get at the heart of the issue, which is corruption in Ukraine, and saying that, look, this company, Burisma, has had a long track record of being corrupt. And so... the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, George Kent, is informing him about what was really the problem with Burisma, and it was about Zlochevsky, who was the owner of Burisma, and how he had stole money, obviously paid off somebody in the Prosecutor General's office, and then the company, that investigation just went poof, like he said, the money went poof. So he would definitely like to see those brought to account that were responsible for, shutting down that investigation. But then that's when Steve Castor uses that as a segue to get to, individuals that were hired to the board of Burisma in 2014. and he's asking about those individuals. And the most prominent one, as George Kent was saying, was the former president of Poland. He asked if there was anybody else. At this point, George Kent knows what he's talking about. Well, there were some American individuals that were appointed to the board. Most prominent was Hunter Biden. Now, then he tries to get into the background of Hunter Biden and saying, well, he's trying to figure out, well, was this an effort? First of all, how would George Kent know what the effort was from a corrupt individual that owned Burisma? He wouldn't know that. That's first of all. But he's kind of suggesting that these people were put on the board as some form of protection for him. All right. But then he's trying to get into the background of Hunter Biden, saying that, what is his experience?
His qualifications.
What did he graduate with? A degree in what? And, does he even speak Ukrainian? Did he move there? This and that.
But it only suggests that Hunter Biden was not qualified for the job.
Okay.
That's all it suggests.
That's
it does not point to any kind of criminal activity. But let's kind of put everything into context and really get to the heart of what Castor is trying to lay out here, which is something that doesn't make any sense. Because what figure does this whole situation surround as far as Burisma go? Who does it surround? Who? What?
Well, Biden.
No.
Right. Oh, you talking about the officially?
Officially.
Oh, the owner. Zlochevsky.
The owner.
Yes, Zlochevsky.
The owner.
Yes. He was the corrupt individual. He was the one that was stealing money. He was the one that obviously bribed somebody that was in the prosecutor general's office to shut down the investigation. So that was what the investigation was for, to go after a corrupt individual, the owner of the company.
That's what the investigation centered on.
Right.
And it's interesting because it seems as if Castor is actually making the case to go after Hunter Biden very stupid.
Yes.
He's actually destroying that case here.
Yes, he is.
Because he said himself that Hunter Biden got added to the board after the investigation was started. So that suggests that Hunter Biden would have nothing to do with what this owner did.
Right.
And think about
how
dumb that is. What if the CEO of a company was caught doing something? Would you start investigating, I guess, regional managers, regional vice presidents that came to the company 2 years after the investigation?
Right.
That doesn't even make sense. You wouldn't start investigating those people. And I think probably I should have mentioned this first, but the other reason why he's not making the case to investigate Hunter Biden and kind of throwing a little bit of dirt on the whole notion that an investigation should have been started on one person is the fact that there were other board members. Because if it was really about corruption, like the Republicans and Donald Trump are saying, then guess what? There would have been a little list.
Yeah, there would have been a list.
There would have been a list
Right.
of other people.
Right.
That should tell you that it's bullshit.
Yeah. But there's another part of this as well, too, because, of course, he's using Hunter Biden as a way of getting to Joe Biden, his father, and I guess selling the idea that the withholding of the funds, the security assistance to Ukraine, and, all of that was proper. All of that was appropriate. But why that does not make sense is because it wasn't just Joe Biden, who was the VP at the time. He was the vice president of the United States. But he was the point person for
the larger effort.
Yes, a coalition of Western powers. The IMF, Western countries, the United States of America, the parliament in Ukraine. All of them wanted to do what? They wanted to get rid of the prosecutor in Ukraine that was guilty of just shuttering this investigation. So if Hunter Biden was actually the target of this investigation, you're telling me that Joe Biden did not want to protect his son. He wanted to make it so that he could be investigated because the investigation was dormant. The investigation had been essentially shut down. So he wants to remove that individual, Shokin, who's not investigating his son. His son is guilty. That's what the Republicans are trying to sell the idea of. He wants to remove this individual so that somebody else can come in and actually investigate the target, which is Hunter Biden, so that Hunter Biden can get jammed up and prosecuted? It doesn't make any sense.
And so that time period you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't that tie into Kent's and Taylor's opening statement about Ukraine being invested in reform. Yeah. That time period where Joe Biden served as the point man and representing a coalition of countries and the IMF in helping Ukraine reform its effort to get rid of the corruption from holdovers from the previous administration. All that ties into Kent's and Taylor's opening testimony, because that's around that time. That's what they're talking about.
Right. All right, so now we're going to get to Schiff. So Schiff begins speaking again, and here he's going to focus on Zelensky and that investigation and the announcement of the investigation that Zelensky had committed to.
Even after the aid was ultimately released, even after the White House learns of the whistleblower complaint and the congressional investigation, the aid is released, even after those events, you were still worried that Zelensky was going to feel it necessary to go on CNN and announce these investigations, were you not?
Mr. Chairman, I was still worried that he might do that. So yes, I thought that would be a bad idea. And so when there was some indication that there might still be a plan for the CNN interview in New York, which was upcoming at the United Nations General Assembly meeting, I was worried. I wanted to be sure that that didn't happen, so I addressed it with the Zelensky staff.
And I think you said earlier that Dan Liuk, the National Security Advisor then for Zelensky, was concerned Zelensky didn't want to be used as some tool in American politics. Is that right?
That's correct, sir.
So Zelensky didn't want to go on TV and announce political investigations that he thought would mire him in U.S. politics, right?
He knew that he and his advisors knew that it's a bad idea to interject, to interfere in other nations' elections. Yes, sir.
But nonetheless, it appeared until the aid was lifted, the hold was lifted, that he felt compelled to do it.
He was making plans, his staff was making plans to have him make some kind of announcement, I don't know what it would have been, on CNN in public.
Even though he didn't want to be marred in U.S. politics.
Even though he knew it was a bad idea to interfere in other people's elections.
Whoa.
Now, this is not debated. You will hear how the Republicans choose to respond to that line of testimony. But it's not to debate the facts that President Zelensky was ready to have an interview with CNN and potentially announce these investigations. That is not where Republicans will go. Now, again, this will become important later on. But as we see, President Zelensky, for some reason, was committed to the idea of having an interview with CNN and announcing these investigations. Now, that's not just testimony from Ambassador Bill Taylor. That's not just coming from President Zelensky or his staff. CNN has confirmed this as well. So the individual that was going to be interviewing President Zelensky was Fareed Zakaria. And he has already stated that, yes, they were setting up a meeting. They were actually in talks for some time, but they had actually, it seemed as though everything had come together and there was going to be an interview. And then there wasn't. And then there wasn't.
And then there wasn't. So what do you say about the whole kind of idea that there was, no pressure? And Zelensky himself felt no pressure. Isn't that that's a narrative that Republicans and Donald Trump have been floating?
Yeah.
That, hey, he felt
pressure.
he felt zero pressure at all. And Zelensky himself said he felt no pressure. But might Zelensky lie about that? Wouldn't as a president, is it a chance that he would not be forthcoming about feeling pressure from the United States? There is a chance that
it's a good chance
he would not be forthcoming actually about feeling pressure because number one, he would have faced opposition from Ukraine, and then one thing to note is what gives credence to my speculation about Zelensky and why he would lie is the fact that after the call was released, there was protest in Ukraine, right? Mm-hmm. Why would that be? After the call was released,
Ukraine was actually upset.
They were upset.
Many people in Ukraine, including Zelensky, it's reported, were upset that the call was released. They didn't want that.
They didn't want that. They didn't want that release. And there's a reason for that. So Like the whole notion that, Zelensky didn't feel pressured. I don't think that holds water, because it's most likely he didn't want to admit he felt pressure. But we've already received testimony that kind of contradicts that.
And if there was no pressure, if this was just something that was following the appropriate process, then why was the interview canceled?
Yeah,
You understand?
Yeah. That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Like that. I think that it kind of throws in the wrench of the whole Republican narrative about the terms and conditions of the aid in the first place. Because what have they been saying? The Ukrainians and Zelensky, they didn't even know it was being withheld. So how can it be bad? How can it be bribery? How can it be a quid pro quo? Because they didn't know it was being held. But again, as Trump has said himself, he was withholding the aid for what? What was he withholding the aid for?
To fight corruption.
To investigate corruption. So that was, he himself said that is the leverage. So how would Ukraine and Zelensky be expected to comply without knowing it was being held up? Do you see what I'm saying? How that doesn't make any sense? If you were saying, hey, I held this aid up because I wanted them to tackle corruption, but then you say they didn't know it was being withheld, then if that's the leverage, then how would they know to comply if they didn't know it was being held? How would that happen? How does that work?
Right. All right, so Representative Jim Jordan, who is a temporary member of the House Intelligence Committee now. He has just been appointed a role on that committee just for this purpose, so that he can ask questions. But he talks about the CNN interview, but it's very ridiculous where he goes with it.
In those 55 days that aid is delayed, you met with President Zelensky 3 times. The first one was July 26th, the day after the famous call now between President Trump and President Zelensky. President Zelensky meets with you, Ambassador Volker, and Ambassador Sondland. And again, according to your deposition and your testimony, there was no linkage of security assistance dollars to investigating Burisma or the Bidens. Second meeting is August 27th. Again, in this 55-day time frame, second meeting is August 27th. President Zelensky meets with you and Ambassador Bolton and others. And again, there's no linkage of dollars, security assistance dollars, to an investigation of the Bidens. And then, of course, the third meeting is September 5th. President Zelensky meets with you and Senators Johnson and Murphy. And once again, there was no linkage of security assistance dollars to an investigation of Burisma or the Bidens. 3 meetings with the president of Ukraine, the new president, and no linkage. That's accurate?
Ms. Jordan, it's certainly accurate on the first two meetings, because to my knowledge, the Ukrainians were not aware of the hold on assistance until the 29th of August.
So the Politico article.
The third meeting that you mentioned with the Senators Murphy and Senator Johnson, there was discussion of the security assistance, but
no linkage.
But there was not discussion of linkage.
3 meetings face-to-face with President Zelensky, no linkage. Yet, in your deposition, you said this, and you said it again in the first hour of the majority. My clear understanding was security assistance money would not come until President Zelensky committed to pursue the investigation. My clear understanding was they weren't going to get the money until President Zelensky committed to pursue the investigations. Now, with all due respect, Ambassador, your clear understanding was obviously wrong, because it didn't happen. President Zelensky didn't announce he was going to investigate Burisma or the Bidens. He didn't do a press conference and say, I'm going to investigate the Bidens, we're going to investigate Burisma. He didn't tweet about it, and you just told the ranking member he didn't do the CNN interview and announce he's going to investigate Burisma or the Bidens.
Yo.
That is an attempt to really distort how things really played out. William Taylor, Ambassador Bill Taylor, did say that it was his clear understanding that a meeting between President Zelensky and President Trump was conditioned on the investigation.
After,
yes. Now, he also came to understand that everything, according to Sondland, everything was conditional on the announcement of investigations. What Jim Jordan is saying is that, well, what ended up happening? See, there was no CNN interview. President Zelensky didn't announce anything. So really what he's saying is that because things changed, there was no effort to get Zelensky in that public box. There was no effort to actually force and extort Ukraine
Because it
to
didn't
actually
happen.
involve themselves in the American election. Because it didn't happen. So
There was no effort because it
yeah.
didn't happen.
We're talking about the end result. So we'll just look at the end result and see what that happens. And we don't have to bother ourselves with what happened in between.
So the behavior of Trump, Giuliani, and some individuals of his administration don't matter as long as they ultimately didn't get what they wanted out of the situation. And first of all, Taylor never claimed that conversations with President Zelensky gave rise to his suspicions. He never said that. So again, Jim Jordan is bad at his job because you question witnesses based on the things that they have claimed. He never claimed that.
No.
He came to that understanding based on his talks with other people like Sondland and Volker.
Right.
That's why he came to that conclusion, and also his staff as well.
His staff as well. So yes, he is bad at his job. But again, his concern is not what happened in between. He's trying to just deal with what happened at the end, as if there's never an effort to do crime, as you said. Like there's never an effort to do crime, but things fall apart.
After the show, after Tuesday's show, we always rap and we always just chop it up after the show. We just talk about the show, maybe future show, future shows, just a subject matter, and this kind of justification that Jim Jordan is trying to sell makes no sense if you look at it in terms of other type of crimes or attempting other type of crimes.
Right.
Like, what did you bring up on Tuesday?
I said, well, if I choose to just walk into a bank and hey,
Fill the bag up, son.
I got a gun, fill everything up, all right? Fill everything up.
Oh, wait. Well, hold up. Hey, yo, Will, I hear sirens. Whistleblower.
Yeah.
I hear sirens, man, from a mile away. Say on the lookout.
Yeah.
I hear sirens, man. They coming for you.
Well, shit.
That's September 9th.
Yeah.
That's September 9th.
Right.
What happened on September 9th?
Yeah, that was, well...
That was when Congress...
That was when Congress was approached, actually,
Yes.
and they found out about the whistleblower.
So whistleblower, a.k.a. somebody on the lookout,
Yes.
while you robbing the bank,
Right.
it's like, whoop, whoop. Hey, man, I hear sirens. They coming.
Right.
So what do? You're like, oh, what do I do, man?
Yeah, well, I ain't got time to
I ain't
fill
got
these
time.
bags. I'm just going to duck out, man.
I'm just gonna duck out.
And just try to get away with it. I didn't earn anything.
You didn't get anything out of it.
I'm
you
gonna get
changed
out
your
of
mind.
here.
You backed
Get out
out.
of
You
here.
backed out. So the actual, you didn't get what you wanted out of the situation. So what does that ultimately mean?
That means
the cops ain't coming after you.
Oh yeah,
right?
I get off skate-free,
You
man.
get off scot-free.
Scot-free,
Yeah, you skate.
I skate on the charges because there's no charges.
No charges.
Because I didn't get anything.
Even though it was attempted armed robbery of a bank or wherever, you get off scot-free because you never got no
They're not
money.
even coming for me.
They're not even coming.
They're going to
for
come to the bank and see, oh, well, nothing was taken? All right,
you.
well,
Well, sorry.
wrap this up.
Yep.
No, I'm going to jail for attempted robbery. But see, again, Jim Jordan doesn't want to deal with that fact. He just wants to see the end result, that the crime didn't actually turn out to be successful. But that's what happened. All right, so here again is Jim Jordan, and he's talking about the star witness.
And then what you have in front of you is an addendum that Mr. Sondland made to his testimony that we got a couple weeks ago. It says, Declaration of Ambassador Gordon Sondland. I, Gordon Sondland, do hereby swear and affirm as follows. I want you to look at point number 2, bullet point number 2, second sentence. Ambassador Taylor recalls that Mr. Morrison told Ambassador Taylor that I told Mr. Morrison that I conveyed this message to Mr. Yarmak on September 1st, 2019 in connection with Vice President Pence's visit to Warsaw and a meeting with President Zelensky. Now, this is his clarification. Let me read it one more time. Ambassador Taylor recalls that Mr. Morrison told Ambassador Taylor that I told Mr. Morrison that I conveyed this message to Mr. Yarmak on September 1st, 2019 in connection with Vice President Pence's visit to Warsaw and a meeting with President Zelensky. We got 6 people having 4 conversations in one sentence, And you just told me this is where you got your clear understanding. Which, I mean, even though you had 3 opportunities with President Zelensky for him to tell you, you know what, we're going to do these investigations to get the aid. Didn't tell you 3 different times. Never makes an announcement, never tweets about it, never does a CNN interview. Ambassador, you weren't on the call, were you? You didn't listen on President Trump's call and President Zelensky's call?
I did not.
You've never talked with Chief of Staff Mulvaney?
I never did.
You never met the president?
That's correct.
You had 3 meetings again with Zelensky and it didn't come up.
And 2 of those they had never heard about, as far as I know.
And President
There was no reason for it to
President
come up.
Zelensky never made an announcement. This is what I can't believe. And you're their star witness. You're their first witness.
He's doing a bad job. First of all, William Taylor nor George Kent are the star witnesses. There's going to be a lot of witnesses that actually testify. I think it was prudent for these particular gentlemen to be the first because they're laying the foundation. Some of the things that they testified to, they had firsthand knowledge of. Some of the things they didn't. But they have to lay that foundation so that the people that come after them, the people that they are referencing, the conversations they had with these people, that may have had other conversations with other people, they have to come before those people. So when somebody like Sondland, somebody like Volker testifies, they're going to be asked, well, William Taylor, George Kent said that he heard this from you. What do you have to say about that? You see, that's why there has to be an order to this thing. And the whole idea of there were 3 meetings that Ambassador Bill Taylor had with President Zelensky, and none of this linkage was made. The linkage from the aid to the announcement of investigations. William Taylor says that in those first 2 meetings, he does not believe, from his vantage point, from his experience, he does not believe that the Ukrainians knew about the withheld aid. But that's from his vantage point. There have been other remarks. Notably, we talked about, I believe on the last show, Catherine Croft, who is a State Department official and special advisor for Ukraine, who stated that the Ukrainians started asking questions about that withheld security assistance shortly after it had been withheld. So that would be before Bill Taylor knows that the Ukrainians know about it.
So Jim Jordan's take is, since everybody didn't know everything immediately, there's nothing to see here.
Right.
That's basically what Jim Jordan is trying to lay out, which is...
All right, so gonna get to Jim Hines, Representative Jim Hines. All of this is pretty important. Really, this is about 4 or 5 minutes long, but his whole line of questioning and his remarks were pretty impactful.
One of the things I find startling about these proceedings is that faced with very serious allegations of presidential misconduct, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't engage or defend that conduct. Rather, they spin theories about black ledgers and Steele dossiers and the startling revelation that Ukrainians might have been upset when a presidential candidate suggested that perhaps he would let the Russians keep Crimea. Or, of course, we get the attacks so epitomized by Mr. Nunes's opening statement when he attacked Democrats, he attacked the media, and most disgustingly attacked the extraordinary men and women of the State Department and the FBI. When a defense does emerge, it looks a little like this. Ukraine is a corrupt country, and the president was just acting in a long line, a long tradition of actually trying to address corruption in Ukraine. Mr. Kent, you've worked on anti-corruption and rule of law efforts for much of your 27-year career. Is that correct?
I have specialized in anti-corruption and rule of law issues since 2012, correct?
So, like most of us up here, I don't have a good sense of what a real anti-corruption effort that we must engage in all over the world all the time, what that looks like. So let me ask you to just take a minute and just characterize for us what a real initiative, what a real program of anti-corruption might look like.
If we're doing a systemic, holistic program, you need institutions with integrity. That starts with investigators. It goes to prosecutors. It goes to courts, and eventually it goes to the correction system. In countries like Ukraine, we generally start with law enforcement, and that's what we did in 2014-15 with the new patrol police. There also is oftentimes needed a specialized anti-corruption agency. In Ukraine, that was called the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, or NABU. There was a different body that reviewed asset declarations for unusual wealth called National Anti-Corruption Prevention Council. And eventually we got to helping them establish a special anti-corruption prosecutor and eventually a high court on anti-corruption. And that was to try to create investigators, prosecutors, and courts with integrity that couldn't be bought and would be focused on high-level corruption.
So what I'm hearing there, Mr. Kent, is a very comprehensive effort. So let me read you President Trump's own words to the Ukrainian president in their July 25th phone call. And I quote, "There's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that, so whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me." Mr. Kent, when you hear those words, do you hear the president participating in or requesting a thoughtful and well-calibrated anti-corruption program?
I do not.
And Mr. Kent and Mr. Taylor, the defenders of the president's behavior have made a big deal out of the fact that Vice President Biden encouraged the Ukrainians to remove a corrupt former Ukrainian prosecutor, 2016, Mr. Shokin. And in fact, Senator Rand Paul on Sunday said, and I quote him, "They're impeaching the President Trump for exactly the same thing that Joe Biden did." Is that correct? Is what the president did in his phone call and what Joe Biden did in terms of Mr. Shokin, are those exactly the same things? And if not, how are they different?
I do not think they are the same things. What former Vice President Biden requested of former President of Ukraine, Poroshenko, was the removal of a corrupt prosecutor general, Viktor Shokin, who had undermined a program of assistance that we had spent, again, U.S. taxpayer money, to try to build an independent investigator unit to go after corrupt prosecutors. And there was a case called the Diamond Prosecutor case in which Shokin destroyed the entire ecosystem that we were trying to help create. The investigators, the judges who issued the warrants, the law enforcement that had warrants to do the wiretapping, everybody to protect his former driver whom he'd made a prosecutor. That's what Joe Biden was asking, remove the corrupt prosecutor.
So Joe Biden was participating in an open effort, established whole of government effort to address corruption in Ukraine.
That is correct.
Great. So, Mr. Kent, as you look at this whole mess, Rudy Giuliani, President Trump, in your opinion, was this a comprehensive and whole of government effort to end corruption in Ukraine?
Referring to the requests in July?
Exactly.
I would not say so. No, sir.
Yeah.
That's why I said it was important to play that whole clip. You know, that was pretty much his entire 5 minutes. And the way he laid it out was, like I said, very important, very impactful. He had to get a response from George Kent, and if he believed that what Trump did was like an official use or an appropriate use of government effort. Was it an official government effort to tackle corruption? What he heard in that phone call, what other things that had happened, like I said, the withholding of the aid. Was this like an official, legitimate effort to tackle corruption? And what George Kent said was that no, it does not seem so.
I mean, we've been pointing to this, ever since this Ukraine issue started. Mm-hmm. We've been kind of pointing that out. Like, what would an actual kind of corruption type sting look like if you want to, broaden it to an entire country? What would it look like? And he laid it out. You wouldn't just, hey, I want you to investigate this one person. He went over broad measures that you would go through in order to do that.
Right.
But one thing, I think, overall, what he was saying was there was already an effort in regard to anti-corruption in Ukraine.
Yes.
That's what he was trying to lay out. So there was just ongoing diplomatic effort between the United States and Ukraine to seek out corruption. So that was already there. So for Trump to act as if, like him, unilaterally, and he was unprecedentedly trying to engage Ukraine in regard to corruption is just not true, as we see, from this testimony. This was an ongoing effort. So if it was Trump was genuinely worried about it, all he would have done was coordinate with either the State Department or with Ukraine's new ambassador to kind of strengthen those efforts. It just doesn't look like that's what Trump was doing. And like Kent's testimony says, Biden was a part of that effort in regard to Ukraine's reformation.
He was part of the open, official effort.
Open, yeah, that's key. It was
Yes.
open, official effort. So when that video was going around about Biden bragging, number one, we kind of point that out all the time that Biden likes to brag.
He does.
So he likes to take
I
credit for
did
things.
this.
I did this. And now we know he was the point man. Like how much effort he ultimately put in, we don't know, but he was the point man. So we're just going to just give this to him.
Yeah.
We don't care. But yeah, that's why he was bragging, because as Kent said, there was a prosecutor who actually was destroying evidence and not prosecuting. And Biden was a part of getting that prosecutor out. Those are facts. Those are facts.
That's why it's so disingenuous to equate what Biden did to what President Trump did. And there is a real effort. And Representative Himes, he read off some words from Senator Rand Paul, who was making a statement like that. Joe Biden did the same thing that President Trump is doing. No, it's not even near the same thing. Even if you say that there was an appearance of a conflict of interest because Joe Biden was the point man, he was the VP, and his son, Hunter Biden, was on the board of Burisma. I will allow that. Yes, that doesn't look good. It doesn't look good whatsoever. Even if Joe Biden wasn't the VP, he still was the VP, and I would assume that that had something to do with why Hunter Biden got that position. So I wouldn't like it. I think it is the appearance of corruption, but it's the appearance of legal corruption, not illegal corruption. That is something that I don't believe is prosecutable at all. So even though I dislike it, I can't do anything about it. Nobody else can. Well, as of right now, nobody can do anything, I guess, like in a court of law and pressing charges, this and that. But it's not the same as President Trump withholding Congress-approved, taxpayer dollar or taxpayer-funded security assistance to Ukraine in order to pressure and extort the country, the president of Ukraine, to engage himself in the 2020 elections, to do President Trump a personal favor and dig up dirt on his rival, his potential 2020 rival, so that his chances at re-election are better. That is not the same thing whatsoever. There are crimes actually committed here as it relates to President Trump's efforts. You can't tell me that there's any crimes concerning what Joe Biden did in trying to get that prosecutor relieved of his duties.
Yeah, what Trump did is not a difference in policy.
No, it's not.
But like if Trump was so passionate about fighting corruption in Ukraine, why has he never talked to or met with the newly appointed acting ambassador? Also, there's not one mention of corruption in Ukraine in any public speech prior to September 2019. Not one tweet prior to September 2019 about corruption in Ukraine. Although there are plenty of speeches where he highlighted corruption in other countries, like 20 other countries, but not Ukraine. I find that puzzling.
Puzzling.
And I don't think we've kind of talked about this on this show, but if he was going to use this to take down Biden, he used it at the wrong time.
Yes, he did.
Like, cause like
Why now?
Why now? Like he has some time. We don't know who's going to be the Democratic nominee for president because, if the narrative is true that Donald Trump was indeed engaging with Ukraine in this way, using a back channel with his attorney in order to have some sort of leg up in 2020, use this in his campaign against Joe Biden, like in particular, like why did he do it so early? Because he did. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know yet whether Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee. This can't be something that his campaign manager knew about. Because I guarantee you, his campaign manager will be like, "Oh no." Like if it was,
Wait.
This tells me that his
Parscale.
Parscale. This tells me that Parscale don't do nothing about this. Because I guarantee you, if Parscale knew about this whole deal, behind closed doors, back channel, irregular channel, what's going on, Parks can be like, no, don't do this. We don't know whether it's
This early,
it's not the right move this early because when do they kind of outline and set up and establish the budget? Isn't it like somewhere in October, end of October somewhere
around there?
That's before the election. It's before the election. He could have waited until 2020.
He could have.
He may not even have to do it. So he may have just did this for no reason. He may have just got himself caught up into something for no reason at all. Because Biden might not even be the Democratic nominee. And if he is, he could have waited till 2020.
It was a bad decision all the way around. All right, so now we're going to hear from Representative John Ratcliffe, who goes into how Zelensky has stated that there was no pressure. He has made several statements in the media, so he's using that as proof that everything that was done was appropriate.
If nobody in the Ukrainian government is aware of a military hold at the time of the Trump-Zelensky call, then as a matter of law and as a matter of fact, there can be no quid pro quo based on military aid. And to your knowledge, nobody in the Ukrainian government was aware of the hold. And your answer was, that is correct. Is that still your testimony?
Mr. Ratcliffe, at some point in September.
I'm talking about on July 25th.
July 25th. Sorry. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. They did not know this.
All right. And as it turns out, President Zelensky agreed with you. On October 10th, President Zelensky held a press marathon with over 300 reporters where he said repeatedly and consistently over hours and hours that he was not aware of a military hold during the July 25th call. In fact, in his official press release from the Ukrainian government available on his website that I'll be introducing into the record, he said, "Our phone conversation bears no relations to arms. They blocked the provision of military assistance prior to our telephone conversation, but the issue had not been discussed during our conversation. I mean, I didn't even know." So, now, in addition to confirming that because he had no knowledge of it, there was no quid pro quo involving military aid during that call, President Zelensky went on to confirm a number of things: that there was no pressure, that there were no conditions, that there were no threats on military aid. There were no conditions or pressure to investigate Burisma or the 2016 election, that there was no blackmail, that there was no corruption of any kind during the July 25th call. Again, from his official press release. Therefore, there was no blackmail because it was not the subject of our conversation with the President of the United States. There were no conditions on the investigation, either because of arms or the situation around Burisma Company. He told Reuters there was no blackmail. He told the LA Times there was no pressure or blackmail from the United States. He told Japan's Kyodo News, I was never pressured and there were no conditions being imposed. He told ABC News and the BBC, I'm against corruption. This is not corruption. It was just a call. The Ukrainian president stood in front of the world press and repeatedly, consistently, over and over again, interview after interview, said he had no knowledge of military aid being withheld, meaning no quid pro quo, no pressure, no demands, no threats, no blackmail, nothing corrupt. And unlike the first 45 minutes that we heard from the Democrats today, that's not secondhand information, it's not hearsay, it's not what someone overheard Ambassador Sondland say. That was his direct testimony. Ambassador Taylor, do you have any evidence to assert that President Zelensky was lying to the world press when he said those things? Yes or no?
Mr. Ratcliffe, if I can respond.
My time is short.
Your time
yes
is
or no?
short. That's right. I have no reason to doubt what the president said in his.
Okay.
Number one, there's a flaw and there's some logic here. Let's just say there's no pressure, but does that mean everything was okay?
No.
Ratcliffe said there was no conditions. Trump set no conditions. Well, he didn't say Trump, but he said there were no conditions. How is that possible?
How is that possible?
How is that possible? Because it essentially undercuts what Trump has said himself and what Republicans have been floating this whole time. Throughout this whole ordeal, not only have they been moving the goalpost, like for like Democrats, right? When Democrats fulfill the conditions, right, that they set up, then they move the goalpost. Not only are they doing that, they're almost moving their own goalpost. They're almost setting up new narratives and kind of new excuses that actually undercut what we already know, and that's Trump himself. And they have said and tried to justify the withholding of aid based on the corruption they say was going on in the Ukraine. Again, from Trump's own mouth. I withheld the aid because I didn't want to see corruption. I wanted them to do something about corruption.
Right.
That's conditional.
That's conditional.
That's conditional. And like I said before, how is Ukraine going to go forth on this effort? And what are they, like, what's causing them and what's influencing to do it unless they know that the aid is being withheld because of that? It doesn't make sense. Like, if you're saying, hey, you got to do me this favor, you got to do X, then I'll do Y. That's how it works. How would Trump expect Ukraine to do it if they don't know that they're missing out on something? It just doesn't even make sense.
If there was no pressure, no conditions, then why was President Zelensky committing to a CNN interview in which he was going to announce the investigations? He was going to do so even though he didn't want to do it. Bill Taylor heard from his own people that he didn't want to do it, that they knew it was not a good idea to interfere in the United States elections, but they were going to do it. And then all of a sudden, they didn't do it anymore. How is that not pressure?
That sounds like pressure to me. That sounds like pressure to me.
If it wasn't pressure, if it wasn't conditional,
they would have still done it.
They would have still done it. And the whole thing about the quid pro quo is irrelevant because there was pressure. There was an effort to actually...
There was a request.
Yes, there was an extortion attempt.
But, like, it makes sense that a president would not put himself on a big stage and say, yeah, I was punked. What? First of all, he's a very young, a very new president. Why would you want to put yourself out there to the public and say, yeah, I got pressured, I was punked by another president? Right. Who would want to do that?
No. I wish he would, but still, it's unreasonable to think that he would.
It's completely unreasonable. And it's like, based on the reaction of Ukrainian officials and the people of Ukraine, it's obvious why he wouldn't do that, because they were protests and Ukrainian officials were mad at the call. So it would make sense that, Zelensky knew that, I kind of have to play this up a bit. I have to play, I can't put myself on blast here. So I don't know, man.
All right. So we're going to go to Adam Schiff, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, trying to push back on that and talking about Ukraine knowing of the withheld aid.
Ambassador Taylor, I don't know if you've had a chance to read that some of the transcripts have been released. Are you aware that other witnesses have testified that Ukraine, in fact, found out the aid was being withheld before it became public knowledge?
Mr. Chairman, I've read that. I think there's still some question about when they may have heard.
And ultimately, they did find out when the political story came out, to your knowledge, but others have said even sooner. But they did find out, right, Ambassador?
They did, Mr. Chairman.
And at the time they found out, they knew what President Trump wanted from them, that he wanted these investigations, correct?
Ambassador Sondland informed President Zelensky's staff, that is Mr. Yermak, of what was required, yes.
So Ukraine finds out about the hold. You're not able to give them a reason for the hold. No one is able to give them a reason for the hold. They know the president wants these investigations. And then they're told in Warsaw by Ambassador Sondland, essentially, you're not getting the aid unless you do these investigations, correct?
That's correct.
They put two and two together.
That was important for you to lay out the math. Even if they didn't explicitly tell them, if nobody from the United States explicitly told Ukraine, hey, this has to happen for this to happen, it was easy to just put the numbers together and come away with, Oh.
So Republicans are trying to like make this case that, hey, since Ukraine didn't know immediately, that means they didn't know. They ultimately found out.
Right.
Because remember, they started getting calls from Ukrainian officials. Like, hey man, we're desperate here, we need this aid.
Yeah. And if they're not getting it, and they also know what Trump wants.
And denying the meetings to Zelensky.
Right. Come on. All right. So Jim Jordan is where we're going to go now. Jim Jordan again. And he, goes on and he's talking to Bill Taylor again, asking him if he was wrong about that clear understanding that he had.
Were you wrong when you said you had a clear understanding that President Zelensky had to commit to an investigation of Biden's before the aid got released, and the aid got released and he didn't commit to an investigation?
Mr. I was not wrong about what I told you, which is what I heard. That's all I've said. I've told you what I heard.
And that's the point. What you
That's the
heard
point.
did not happen. It didn't happen. You had 3 meetings with the guy. He could have told you. He didn't announce he was going to do an investigation before the aid happened. It's not just could it have been wrong. The fact is it was wrong because it didn't happen. The whole point was you had a clear understanding that aid will not get released unless there's a commitment. Not maybe, not I think the aid might happen, and it's my hunch it's going to get released. You use clear language, clear understanding, and commitment. And those two things didn't happen, so you had to be wrong.
So I assume that if I go to police, right, if I go to the police, the authorities, and say there's going to be a bank robbery, I have some inside knowledge, I learned some information, there's going to be a bank robbery at this bank, at this address, at this time.
This is our analogy. This is
All right.
our analogy.
This is our
This is our
analogy.
analogy. We like the bank. We
Yeah,
like the bank
we like
robbery
the bank.
now.
All right. So then there's an attempt to rob the bank, but it's unsuccessful. The perp gets away. The police are going to say, I thought you said it was going to be a bank robbery. There wasn't a bank robbery. They didn't get away with anything.
You getting into this. You really getting into this hypothetical.
That is exactly what Jim Jordan is saying.
Jim Jordan is trying to sell this. That's what Jim Jordan is trying to sell.
All right.
So he's trying to say that Taylor was mistaken or lying.
Yes, because the end result was unsuccessful. All right. Representative Andre Carson, he's talking to George Kent about the former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch.
What was your experience with Ambassador Yovanovitch? Was she working hard to combat corruption in Ukraine, sir?
She was dedicated, as is every U.S. government official in Ukraine, to help Ukrainians overcome the legacy of corruption, which they actually have made a number of important steps since 2014.
So in fact, before all of this happened, you and your superiors at the State Department asked the ambassador to extend her time in the Ukraine, correct, sir?
That is correct.
Did you support her extension?
I asked her to extend until the end of this year to get through the election cycle in Ukraine, and then Undersecretary Hale in March asked her to stay until 2020.
Now, some in Ukraine probably disliked her efforts to help Ukraine root out corruption. Is that correct?
As I mentioned in my testimony, you can't promote principled anti-corruption action without pissing off corrupt people.
Fair enough. Now, some of those people helped Giuliani smear her, did they not?
They did.
So ultimately, that smear campaign pushed President Trump to remove her, correct, sir?
I cannot judge that. What I can say is that Rudy Giuliani's smear campaign was ubiquitous in the spring of 2019 on Fox News and on the internet and Twitter sphere.
So Ambassador Taylor and Mr. Kent, in all of your combined decades at the State Department, have you ever before seen an instance where an ambassador was forced out by the president following a smear campaign of misinformation orchestrated by the president's allies?
I have not.
Nor I.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
What was that statement? The statement that stood out the most? You can't tackle corruption without pissing off those who are corrupt.
Yeah, essentially that's what he said.
And again, you can't take any of that statement out of context with what he said about Yovanovitch, about how she took part in Ukraine's anti-corrupt efforts. Now, if that's the case, and she was pushed out,
and she was pushed out. Not just pushed out. I mean, she was smeared and pushed out.
And okay. She was taking part in helping Ukraine rid itself of corruption and Trump associates. And I'll pivot a little bit by giving Kent a lot of credit here for not speculating. He's only talking about what he knows. He's not going to speculate, even though it's obvious.
Yes.
He's just there to be a fact witness from what he knows from firsthand experience. And his firsthand experience told him that there were some back channel people, specifically Giuliani, along with some other goons, trying to push Yovanovitch out.
Yep.
He doesn't want to speculate whether Trump had anything to do with that, which is what he's supposed to do. He's not supposed to do that. So you got to credit him for doing that. But I do think it's interesting and it's telling that Yovanovitch was pushed out by people connected to Donald Trump. And Yovanovitch was actually helping with anti-corrupt efforts.
Right.
So.
And I thought the whole effort by this president, Donald Trump, was to actually tackle corruption in Ukraine.
You thought?
I thought.
Yeah. Well, according to what they said. We don't
according
think
to what
that's
the
true.
Republicans say. All right. So now we're going to hear from Republican Representative Chris Stewart. He tries to go into the idea that no one is immune to prosecution, not even political candidates. Wink, wink. Joe Biden.
If someone was a candidate for a political office, even for president of the United States, should they be immune from investigation?
No one is above the law, sir.
Thank you. I agree with that. I think we all would agree with that. And yet I think some presume that because some of the individuals we're talking about here were candidates, that they are immune from any questions or any investigation. I think it's absurd. For heaven's sakes, if those of us in public office, those of us who find ourselves up for re-election or all the time as a candidate, I think we have a higher standard, not immunity from asking these types of questions. The last thing, then I'm going to yield my time. Availability of funds, I'm quoting from the NDAA in 2019. The language is specific. Availability of funds under assistance to the Ukraine, it has to be certified. And what has to be certified? Quote, for the purposes of decreasing corruption. Are you surprised that there would be questions about corruption in Ukraine and that it would be discussed withholding some of this aid that's actually required by law that it be withheld if they can't certify that corruption has been eliminated or is being addressed?
The certification in that case is done by the Secretary of Defense upon advice of his staff in consultation with the interagency community. We were fully supportive of that conditionality, and the Secretary of Defense had already certified that that conditionality had been met.
And so we agree that we should withhold funds if there's questions about corruption that have not been addressed.
All right, so two things, quick things for me. No one is immune to investigation. Cool. Nobody is immune to investigation. Definitely includes President Donald Trump. But what he is asserting is that somebody like former Vice President Joe Biden is not immune from investigation. Okay, but then if the money was held up for a legitimate reason, then why was it released without anything being achieved? Why was it released before you learned anything about Joe Biden or his son? That's one. Two, he mentioned that funds should be withheld if there are legitimate questions about corruption, and we're talking about Ukraine, who, of course, corruption is endemic. So it's appropriate to have those questions and to, I guess, have those questions answered before you release the aid. Now, one thing about that is that the State Department and the Department of Defense had already certified that those questions were addressed. Significant efforts had been made to rid the country of corruption. So that had already been addressed, so the money should not have been held up for that purpose. But even if it was held up for that purpose, what was achieved before the money was released? That is the significant question. If there was an appropriate reason to withhold the money, what had happened in those 55 days of that money being held up? Did they learn anything new about corruption in Ukraine? Did they learn anything new about Biden's Did they learn anything at all before they eventually, on September 11th, chose to release the money? The answer is no. So if the answer is no, then I'm going to take from that there was no actual legitimate purpose to withhold this money.
He's trying to take some sort of general truth and apply it to a situation where it should not apply. Because it's not the president's job to unilaterally make that decision.
Right.
Without including the input of the State Department, which he did not do. And like you said, they already approved the funds.
Right.
And if you listen to the testimony from Kent and Taylor, there was ongoing effort to tackle corruption anyway.
Right.
So this kind of extra effort that they claim Trump was trying to make in order to see that Ukraine was worthy of the assistance and the aid doesn't make any sense.
If that was the real reason too, why didn't he communicate that to the State Department?
If that was the
Pentagon?
real reason, why did he not communicate?
He left them in the dark.
Jim Jordan kind of floated that narrative too. He floated that narrative like he was trying to say that Donald Trump sent. Well, he didn't say his goons. I was going to say goons, but Donald Trump employed Sondland and other members of his administration to vet Zelensky.
Yeah, I think we have that later.
Yeah, well, we had it later. I'll go into why that's dumb when we watch that clip.
All right, so now we're going to hear from Representative Elise Stefanik, who wants to communicate two important facts that never change.
For the millions of Americans viewing today, the two most important facts are the following. Number one, Ukraine received the aid. Number two, there was in fact no investigation into Biden.
They're doing a bad job at defending Republicans and Donald Trump. Like, do they realize it? Actually, you know what? I don't think they realize it because you just stated this, like, after we watched the previous clip, that if it was conditional upon Ukraine tackling corruption, if the release was conditional upon that, and they released the aid, then where was this clarity? Where was this clarity, like, outlined? That's what was missing here. So all these Republicans are saying, hey, this policy. We got to make sure they on the up and up before they get this aid. Let's just say that's true. All right, the aid was released. Okay, let's clarify what you figured out. But you're still talking about Joe Biden, though, and how that needs to be tackled. How does that make sense?
And actually, I can kind of reword her comments, too, because she said the second part of what she said, the second fact, was that there was no investigation into Biden. That kind of suggests that there would be a problem if there was an investigation into Biden. So, look, you can't have both things. You can't say that it was appropriate to launch this investigation. You can't say it was appropriate to withhold the money so that an investigation could be launched. And then say at the same time that, hey, well, no investigation was launched, so everything's okay.
Because
it would have led to an investigation. Your efforts would have led to an investigation. And you're saying, this representative is saying that if an investigation was launched into Biden, then we would have a problem.
So they're saying that Trump requesting an investigation into Biden was wrong.
Yes.
Because they're trying to say that, hey, it didn't happen. So therefore, you can't, this whole proceeding is illegitimate. And we don't need to be here because, see, it didn't happen. But like Will said, well, if you're saying we shouldn't be in this situation, involved in this hearing, because it didn't happen, you are essentially saying, incidentally, that the request to investigate Biden was actually wrong.
Right. These are contradicting ideas, and they don't even understand it. If it was appropriate to start this whole process, withhold the funds, and request that an investigation be launched or announced, then that would have led, obviously, to an investigation into the Bidens. But what she and other Republicans are saying is that, hey, we don't have a problem because there was no investigation started. Oh my gosh, man. All right, so the next clip is of Representative Joaquin Castro, who is the brother of presidential candidate Julian Castro. So this, I think, was the best This was the best job done, I believe, from one of the Democratic Congress members, a part of this committee. He did the best job at actually framing the idea. He did the best job of actually explaining
what this whole thing means.
Yes,
it's
and
bigger,
actually providing a metaphor
yes,
to how this, how this would not be okay in other situations.
Pretty much like, does this the new? Do you want this to be the new normal?
Right.
So we know that President Trump asked for a favor to help his political career, and it appears as though the president of the Ukraine agreed to that favor. Do we know why it didn't actually happen? Do we know why there was no announcement in front of CNN or to CNN about an investigation?
Mr. Castro, as we've determined, as we've discussed here, on September 11th, just before any CNN discussion or interview, the hold was released. The hold on the security systems was released.
But we don't, so the hold was released. Is it possible that the White House released that hold because they knew that a whistleblower had basically turned this in?
I don't know, sir.
Do you think that's possible?
I'm not in a position to judge.
So we have a president who the other side has claimed or has defended the president saying that the aid went through, that there was never any investigation. But the president attempted to get those things done. And it looks like there was an initial agreement by the president of the Ukraine to actually do those things. So, ambassadors, is attempted murder a crime? Is attempted murder a crime?
Attempted murder is a crime.
Is attempted robbery a crime?
Neither of us is a lawyer, but
I think anybody in this room could answer that question.
I think that's right. I'll go out on a limb and say, yes, it is.
Is attempted extortion and bribery a crime?
I don't know, sir.
You see, I
Drop the mic.
That
should be a wrap. I mean, of course, look, we have more testimony from people that have additional firsthand knowledge of certain events.
What stood out to you?
What stood out to me is, first of all, the comparison to other things. Is attempted robbery a crime? Is attempted murder a crime? But also, the first question that he asked in that clip was, why was there no CNN interview? Why was there no announcement? Because it seemed as though
it was already in place.
President Zelensky had put these balls in motion, and that he was actually going to appear. And then Ambassador Taylor said, the hold was released. Well, that shouldn't make any difference because there was no pressure, there was no quid pro quo, there was no extortion attempt. So if there was already an agreement in place for Zelensky to announce these investigations, these very appropriate and legitimate investigations, then why didn't they go forward?
Why didn't they go forward? And again, this is another case where the witnesses they understand their purpose in these hearings.
They can't answer that question.
They can't answer the question. They can't speculate as to motive and intent. All they can do is give testimony based on their firsthand accounts and firsthand experiences. So again, that's another case where they're not trying to overstep their bounds here. But it's still, I think, and Castro doesn't look any bit like offended that he can't answer that question because I think the purpose of his line of questioning is to set up.
Yep, it's to throw it out there.
It's to
for
set
the
it
public
up.
to actually hear that.
He knew that. I was like, okay, I knew you weren't going to answer that. I'm just move on. I'm just here to set this up to show there was some coincidental things going on here.
Look, there's during this whole during this hearing and during the other hearings that are going to take place, there's going to be a lot of questions that we already know the answers to, but you have to put it out there. You have to actually let the witness answer or say that, well, I can't answer that question. A lot of these are going to be rhetorical questions because we already have some of the information. We already have some of the suggestion that something inappropriate did happen. All right, so I think we're going to go back to Representative Jordan again, Representative Jim Jordan again. Here he attempts to correct the record. I say that for a reason. If anybody remembers 2016 and correct the record, the pact, and how they were actually not correcting the record, they were trying to fabricate
a record.
Things.
Trying to smooth over
yes.
a very bumpy record
yes.
for Hillary Clinton.
Right. So this is Jim Jordan's attempt at correcting the record.
What do we call it? What was that? Internet troll army?
Yes.
Yeah.
55 days between July 18th and September 11th that there was a delay on sending hard-earned tax dollars of the American people to Ukraine. We're not talking any country, we're talking Ukraine. Ernst & Young said one of the 3 most corrupt countries on the planet. Our witness on Friday, she testified in her deposition, corruption is not just prevalent in Ukraine, it's the system. So our president said, time out. Time out. Let's check out this new guy. Let's see if Zelensky's the real deal. This new guy who got elected in April, whose party took power in July, let's see if he's legitimate. Now keep in mind, as has already been discussed, in 2018, President Trump had already done more for Ukraine than Obama did. That's right. President Trump, who doesn't like foreign aid, who wanted European countries to do more, who knew how corrupt Ukraine was, did more than Obama because he gave him javelins, tank-busting javelins to fight the Russians. Our witnesses have said this, others have said this. Obama gave him blankets, Trump gave him missiles. But when it came time to check out this new guy, President Trump said, let's just see if he's legit. So for 55 days, we checked him out. President Zelensky had 5 interactions with senior U.S. officials in that time frame. One was, of course, the phone call, the July 25th phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky. And there were 4 other face-to-face meetings with other senior U.S. officials. And guess what? Not one of those interactions, not one, were security assistance dollars linked to investigating Burisma or Biden. But guess what did happen in those 55 days? U.S. senators, Ambassador Bolton, Vice President Pence, all became convinced that Zelensky was in fact worth the risk. He was in fact legit and the real deal and a real change. And guess what? They told the president, he's a reformer, release the money. And that's exactly what President Trump did.
Wow.
Remember what I said about moving the goalposts?
Oh my
Usually,
he completely distorted everything.
Yeah, like usually when, that phrase moving the goalpost enters the conversation, it's usually reference to setting up new standards for your opposition once they've fulfilled those standards, your previous standards. In this case, they're creating new goalposts for themselves, meaning a completely new argument. He's hatching a completely new argument now that we haven't heard from anyone. We haven't heard this argument from anyone.
Nowhere.
Nowhere. So he's trying to float this narrative that presents Zelensky and the Ukrainians being vetted, like seeing if they're worthy enough to receive this aid. And that's what Donald Trump was doing. Not only Donald Trump, that was what Pence and that was Bolton was doing. So why hasn't anyone said any of this up until now, including Donald Trump? He hasn't said this.
Because this is an effort to correct the record. We had already known that there was a May 23rd meeting at the White House, and that included former Secretary Perry, Ambassador Sondland, Ambassador Volker, and Senator Ron Johnson. And they briefed President Trump, because they were part of this delegation, to Ukraine for the inauguration of President Zelensky. He was a new president, so they wanted to show up for him. When they got back, they tried to tell Trump that, hey, yes, this guy is a reformer. He's the real deal. We need to set up a meeting between you and President Zelensky at the White House. President Trump pushed back on that idea, told them to talk to his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Now, again, at this point, the State Department, the Pentagon, had already said that Ukraine had made steps to reforming things in the country and ridding the country of corruption. Zelensky, again, seen as a reformer. This is what members of President Trump's cabinet is telling him. But he is saying that, no, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Talk to my personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Now, months later, we have Representative Jim Jordan saying that throughout this whole time that the aid was withheld, first of all, it wasn't for a counteragency issue, which is what acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney said. It was actually to vet this guy, this new president, President Zelensky, to make sure he's the real deal, to make sure that he's actually going to be ridding the country of corruption. And so within this 55 days, there were several meetings with him. Bolton met with him. Volker met with him. Sondland met with him. And I think he said there was 5 meetings. So throughout this whole time,
they figured out he wasn't corrupt just because they met with
they met with him, and Jim Jordan actually referenced the phone call that President Trump had with President Zelensky as well, and that's a little troubling for me because in this phone call, it didn't seem like he was vetting Zelensky. It seemed, and it actually read as though he was asking for a favor for President Zelensky. For Jim Jordan to now try to sell the idea that all of this was just because we wanted to vet President Zelensky, then why the hell is Biden part of this? Why is Biden part of this? Why is CrowdStrike part of this?
That's a good question, man. But you see how he tried to set it up by quoting Ernst & Young, saying that Ukraine is, what did he say, like one of the 3 most corrupt countries on the planet? On the planet. So he's trying to set this up. So he's trying to set up this situation to justify what Trump did. So there's somebody, Ernst & Young said that Ukraine is very corrupt. But think about how dumb that is, right? Because it wasn't about Zelensky being corrupt. It was about Ukraine as a whole being corrupt.
That's right.
And if it's true, as Jim Jordan says, that Ukraine is one of the most, 3 most corrupt countries on the planet, Trump apparently trusted them to investigate 2 U.S. citizens for corruption. So you're expecting a country that is one of the 3 most corrupt countries to investigate U.S. citizens, even though you're floating that they're the most corrupt? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. All right, so here was an entertaining moment, and you're going to first hear some comments from Representative Jim Jordan, and then you're going to hear Representative Peter Welch respond.
Now, there is one witness that they won't bring in front of us. They won't bring in front of the American people. And that's the guy who started it all, the whistleblower.
Thank you. I say to my colleague, I'd be glad to have the person who started it all come in and testify. President Trump is welcome to take a seat right there. By the way, to my colleagues, if the president wants to attack Joe Biden and his son, he's free to do it. All fair and square in campaigns. He's just not free to change our foreign policy unless he gets his way to assist him in that campaign. That's the line he can't cross.
That didn't end how Jim Jordan expected it to. He didn't expect to be the butt of his own assertion right there. He tried to make an assertion in order to, drop the mic and tear down the house, but the retort and the counter made him look like a fool. It had everybody laughing at Jim Jordan.
Yeah, and it rightfully so, because the person that did not start this, the person that started this was not the whistleblower. We know the person that started it was President Trump. We know that even before these public hearings took place, that a significant point of interest for the Republican Party has been the whistleblower. I think it will remain going forward, but as we hear more and more testimony from individuals that actually had first-hand experience in this whole mess, I think that's going to start kind of fading away.
They're going to have to kind of recalibrate their distractions,
They
or
are.
what they float as distractions. They're going to have to kind of update their deflections.
Yeah, because the whistleblower is not more important than the people that have firsthand knowledge. The whistleblower was the one to sound the alarm on inappropriate actions, but the whistleblower was not there for any of the inappropriate actions. What we have are people actually testifying that were there for them.
Along with that kind of witty response, I like how he kind of added that, hey, shoot, Trump can talk about Biden all he wants. He can talk about the Bidens. He's free to do that.
Anytime he wants.
Anytime he wants.
Remember Brad Parscale, his campaign manager, put out that
that
ad.
video.
And we actually gave him credit because it made Joe Biden look bad.
And using actually
his own words.
And it was not stuff out of context.
No. It was actually it was a job well done. No doubt. So if you want to hit Joe Biden anytime you want to, hell, if you want to talk about the conflict of interest concerning his own son being on the board, make a campaign ad about that, talk about it ad nauseum.
We're already used to him being hypocritical about it.
Yeah.
And he uses things that actually could be used against him, but it would be entirely legal.
Yeah. And it might actually, maybe it gets you some more votes, or maybe it pulls some votes from, because you know what? I don't think it gets you more votes. It may pull, because that's why this is stupid, but it may pull some votes from Biden, but then those votes are going to go to other Democratic candidates. So,
by the way, he just wanted to hurt Joe Biden, but he could have done this. He could have done this without using the executive branch for his personal gain and extorting another country. That's what this is about. It's not necessarily about, hey, this one guy's wrongdoing, but it sets a precedent.
Yeah.
Because that's what he's doing. He's using his executive power and executive privilege to go after a political candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know why people are so surprised that he would do it. Before he got elected, and he didn't have the power, but he always went after his enemies, blatantly, cutthroat. What did we think he was going to do once he got here?
Right.
We have a recent example of that. He used his executive power and his executive privilege and his huge following and his huge influence to denigrate and devalue and demean 3 congresswomen, Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Rashida Tlaib. I guess you can add, Ayanna Pressley in that, but those are the 2 main people. He used his executive power to go after them in a very vicious way. So this is the type of person that uses his executive power to go after people. He didn't do it illegally, but he did spread conspiracies and misinformation about those 3, which was very dangerous. So it makes sense that he would, hey, I can do this. I can do this. I can go after Joe Biden. What makes people think he wouldn't do the same thing to somebody like Bernie Sanders?
He would do it anywhere he has a chance to do it.
So this is not about Joe Biden here. It's not about, hey, this one guy did this one little thing, and we're trying to, or in Congress is trying to hold him accountable. This is bigger than that, because he can very well do the same thing with somebody like Bernie Sanders.
All right, so we got just a couple clips left. These are the closing remarks, not entire, of course, but we clipped them. So first we're going to go to Devin Nunes, partial closing comments.
I want to reiterate what I said earlier, and that is that we really should stop holding these hearings until we get the answer to 3 important topics. The first being the full extent of the Democrats' prior coordination with the whistleblower, and who did the whistleblower coordinate with. Second, the full extent of Ukraine's election meddling against the Trump campaign. And third, why did Burisma hire Hunter Biden, and what did he do for them? And did his position affect any government actions, U.S. government actions under the Obama administration? You are not allowing those witnesses to appear before the committee, which I think is a problem. So we'll expect, hopefully, you will allow us to bring in the whistleblower, the folks that he spoke to, and also numerous Democratic operatives who worked with Ukraine to meddle in the election.
That's what I would call inadmissible speculation or inadmissible theories that have no bearing on this hearing.
It's introducing facts, not in evidence.
Exactly.
It's just throwing shit out there, just seeing if it sticks to the wall, man. That's all he's doing.
If you want witnesses to appear in regard to those situations, there should be an investigation opened, and witnesses connected to those situations most likely would be subpoenaed, most likely would be called, and would have to testify. But that would only occur if investigation into those matters are opened.
And that would be separate.
That would be separate from these proceedings.
Right.
They're just trying to float these theories and these narratives that, for the most part, have no bearing on whether Trump is guilty or innocent.
Prior coordination with the whistleblower, a common talking point and assumption made by Republicans is that there's only one guy that knows the whistleblower's identity, and that is Representative Adam Schiff. He has denied this. And during his closing remarks, he denied as well. We're not going to play that part of it, but he has denied it as well. So what we know to be, it seems as though the facts that we know are that the whistleblower actually went to, like his superiors, right? Went to the ICIG, right? And actually communicated that there was a problem with the phone call, and actually communicated that there was a problem.
He goes to his superior.
Yes, that multiple people had communicated to him or her. We don't know the identity, but communicated to the whistleblower that there was a problem, and there was a problem with the storing of the transcript of this phone call.
That's something we don't bring up enough.
Yes.
This is the first time we brought it up during this show, but it's a good point.
There's no evidence to suggest that the whistleblower went directly to Congress, directly to Representative Adam Schiff's office,
Democratic
spoke to his
operatives.
staff, spoke to him. There's nothing. Again, it's just you're just throwing it out there. Also, Ukraine involvement in the 2016 election, throwing it out there. How did they meddle in the 2016 election? Throwing it out there. And then he wants to know why Hunter Biden was hired on the board of Burisma. How is that relevant?
That's not criminal, though.
It's not.
It's not criminal. Again,
you can be mad about. You can say
it
was a bad look.
And just like what's the guy? What's the guy who pretty much slapped Jim Jordan down? Who was that?
Peter Welch. Welch. Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, those questions are legitimate."
Yeah.
But those aren't questions of legality, though. For you to have questions about how somebody got a job, those are not questions you answer through some sort of criminal investigation.
That's what I'm saying. See, I'm getting tired of people trying to equate what Joe Biden, or actually specifically what Hunter Biden did and being on that board and earning this money. I'm tired of people equating that to the actions of President Trump. You can say that both are examples of corruption, but corruption isn't just this one thing. There are many different types of corruption. There is legal corruption, which we know and which we have disdain for, but what can we do about that? We can admonish it. We can want to see changes to the laws or changes to the norms, but going after it legally, I don't think there's no pathway to do that. So I can be disgusted by the actions of Joe Biden. I can be disgusted by the actions of Hunter Biden, and using that name, using Joe Biden's clout to maybe get that position on the board. I can be disgusted by that. But I don't have to equate that corruption, that seemingly legal corruption, to what President Donald Trump did. To solicit the involvement of a foreign company or a foreign country into to actually interfere with the U.S. presidential election in 2020 is illegal.
Why wasn't there some sort of ethics complaint issued about Biden? That's my question to Devin Nunes, Jim Jordan, and other Republicans, John Ratcliffe. Why was there not an ethics complaint issued when all this was going down? Mm-hmm. This was just such a bad look, and it was just so corrupt. And when y'all had power, Y'all had the House and the Senate. Y'all could have opened this up 2 years ago. That should tell you that this is nothing but theater, and they know there's nothing there, because they actually did, when they had control of the House and the Senate, they would have opened this thing back up to get down to the bottom of
control.
it.
They did have control. And I like where you went, because one other thing that we state on this program when talking about Hunter Biden and Burisma is that this information is not new. So when they did have control of the Senate, and when they did, well, they still have control of the Senate, but when they had control of the House, they could have done something about it, because again, this information isn't new and it had already been reported before.
So at one point they had control when it was going on, and they had control after Trump took office.
Right.
So in two instances. So when it was going on, they had control at some point, and then after Trump took office, they had control of the House and the Senate. So
And when Joe Biden made that comment in January of 2018 about pressuring Ukraine to get rid of that prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, guess who was the president of the United States? Guess who had control of the House of Representatives? It was the Republicans.
that should tell you that they're just kind of using that situation as some sort of like deflection for Donald Trump in this situation.
All right, one more video, and this is I think this is a good way of closing this out too. Adam Schiff, in his closing remarks, he is really establishing a certain timeline of what happened with the aid.
On September 9th, the Inspector General informed our committee that the Director of National Intelligence was withholding a whistleblower complaint in violation of the statute. By that point, on September 9th, that complaint had made its way to the White House. On September 9th, when the Inspector General informed Congress that that complaint had been withheld, the White House also learned that Congress now inevitably would learn about the complaint. It was less than 48 hours later that the military aid would be released.
That seems like testimony to me. That would seem like testimony that people would want to hear, because he's a central figure in all this.
And you know what? Look, sometimes you have to make an effort to connect dots, right? Is it hard to connect those dots? Is it hard to understand that Congress was alerted to a whistleblower report on September 9th and that it was being withheld, but knowing that it was going against the statute of it being withheld, and ultimately they were going to get their hands on it. And the White House knew that as well. And less than 48 hours later, the aid was released.
Those are two simple dots to connect. And what I'm tired of is people who love to get involved in speculative conspiracy construction. That's what I like to call it. Where they connect dots that actually aren't dots. There's speculation and there's theories of themselves, and they connect dots that they invented. And they are willing to go out on very thin limbs to create a narrative, even though I guess the elements of it aren't too solid. But when we have instances like this, where the dots are easy to connect, everybody is just like, oh, no, I got to, Democrats are running this hearing. I don't like Adam Schiff. I don't like the Democrats in general, so therefore I'm going to just look the other way. I'm going to just look the other way, even though the dots are easy to connect. And I'm going to go and, be a part of social media, alternative media shows, and get in the chat section and float conspiracy theories and float things that conflate situations and present, my ideas about what could be true and what isn't true. Why did Obama do this? Why did Biden do this and that? Things that haven't actually been established when the case before you has been established and the dots are easy to connect. Like, stop the bullshit. Stop the bullshit conspiracy speculation without having sound evidence to construct your conspiracy theory, and just focus on what we do have. Everybody else's actions really don't matter. What Obama did, what Biden did, whatever. All that junk doesn't matter, really.
But the truth is boring.
The truth is fucking boring.
The truth is boring, so it enables certain people to create their own truth, or to create their own possibilities of what the truth can be. That's not a very desirable trait to have. I can't stand it. That's what you're saying as well. Just deal with the truth, and that's what we're trying to communicate. Again, you can feel whatever way you feel about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. Look, we have negative feelings about Joe Biden for many other reasons. Now, if we're talking about the legal corruption, it seems as though him and his son were involved in. And I don't know if I can even say that he was involved in it. Maybe Hunter Biden was just, actually really profiting off of his name. I don't know if Joe Biden actually had to do anything.
He's done it before.
Yeah.
George W. Bush gave him a job
Right.
on the board of Amtrak.
So, look, it looks like the appearance of corruption. It looks, especially because Joe Biden was the point person in this whole effort to get rid of the prosecutor, it looks like a conflict of interest. I can admit all of that. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to shield Joe Biden from criticism, Hunter Biden from criticism. No, it's just that they aren't the target. It's just that they have nothing to do with this whatsoever. It was a sham. It would have been a sham investigation. We already know that. And what the Republicans are now saying is that, hey, there was no investigation, so everything's good. But we know there was an effort to get an announcement of the investigations done. It's like I think the most effective line of questioning, or the most effective remarks that we heard, at least from my opinion, is that of Representative Joaquin Castro, because I think he beautifully laid it out as this was an effort. This was an attempt to commit a crime. If it was anything else, if it was attempted murder, if it was attempted robbery, there would be no question. There would be no question what we have to do here. There would be no question that it is a crime. So why are we here, listening to these Republicans trying to say that since nothing was done, attempted extortion, hey, we don't have to concern ourselves with that. Nothing was done. It's ridiculous on its face.
Extortion and then targeting a political rival. And of course, this is not about Biden, and people keep centering it on Biden and not kind of broadening your outlook in regard to this whole situation. It just seems to be very limited. Because again, he can do this to anybody. Why wouldn't he go after somebody who is the nominee, which I hope is Bernie Sanders?
Right.
Why wouldn't he do that? He would do the same damn thing.
All right, so look, that's the analysis for day one of the public hearings. There is going to be many days of this. We don't know how long this is going to last, but there's going to be many people that come before these committees and testify. On Friday, it's going to be former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, which...
She has an axe to grind.
She has an axe to grind. She definitely, and understandably, feels some type of way about being smeared in the media by people definitely linked to President Trump, and that, of course, leading to her ouster of being the ambassador to Ukraine. So her testimony might have a little kick to it, maybe a little bit kick. I don't know.
Don't you think it's interesting, though, that, let's say, I'll take a situation like Julian Assange's arrest. Don't people look past what his improprieties are and what his improprieties may be?
They don't even, no.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't even
like, people were very adamant about, looking at the bigger picture in regards to Julian Assange and what he represents, and maybe what his arrest represents in general, in a broad sense, and not make it about him. It's just interesting how people can be so just like very open-minded and broad thinking in regard to that. But as soon as, this Ukraine situation popped off, everybody wants to include all this other garbage and all this other debris into the situation that doesn't matter. Especially when you talk about what Trump actually did and what kind of precedent that actually sets, whether it be for the next president or him from this point on, and how emboldened he will feel. Like I said before, and I'll say this over again, this is who Trump is. We've seen examples of this from him before he got elected and after he got elected, and how he goes after people. And he would do the same thing to someone else. Again, it's not about one person. It's not about Hunter Biden. It's not about Joe Biden. So stop making it about Joe Biden and what you perceive about his activities or Obama's activities. Do the same thing you did with Julian Assange, and kind of broaden your outlook about what this actually means about what a president can do with his executive office. That's it.
I want to read one comment from Terrabreak. Said, yes, Trump definitely did the quid pro quo thing, but I find it hypocritical of Democrats because anybody with a brain would know that it's just the way deals go down by every president forever. If this is a typical effort by presidents forever, which I do not think it is, so we differ on that. But if this is regular activity by presidents, President Trump's dumbass got caught.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly.
He got caught.
You can't. That's a horrible defense, and that's horrible logic that we would need you to apply to every situation involving potential criminality, and not just when it comes from high office or office in general. You would have to apply that logic to all criminality. Hey, police departments have been corrupt all this time, right? Yeah. They've been guilty of abusing their power, police brutality. Yeah. Hey, that's how it's been for this whole time. So guess what? If it's been that way for the whole time, then
the emergence of cell phones and cameras, that has captured a lot of illegal behavior from police officers around this country.
That's a new one. Maybe the Republicans could maybe seek you out for some consulting. That's a new argument. Hey, presidents have done this all the time. It's just this president just got caught, and that's just not fair. Like, man, please.
All right, so let's. I want to mention a few different things, or a few other things that we didn't really get a chance to go to. Governor Matt Bevin conceded the election in Kentucky, so bye-bye. Of course, he's the incumbent to direct that.
That was kind of, I didn't expect you to just like kind of veer off and just.
But yeah, he was the incumbent, of course, so he has a little bit of time left. But yes, he did lose the election to the Attorney General, Andy Beshear, who's going to be the next Democratic governor of Kentucky. I guess Bevin couldn't come up with a legitimate reason to contest the results.
Yeah, because he hinted at some sort of improprieties.
Deval Patrick officially enters the 2020 race for President of the United States. Of course, he's going to be running as a Democrat. This is the former governor of Massachusetts.
I blame Elizabeth
because she name dropped him.
Because she name dropped him at that event. It's her fault.
I wanted to read one of the things that he said. I guess explaining why he is stepping into the race this late. This is a quote from him, where I believe he was speaking to CBS. He said, "In many ways, it has felt to me watching the race unfold that we are beginning to break into camps of nostalgia on the one hand and big ideas, my way or no way, on the other. We have to be about how we bring people in, how we bring people along, and how we yield to the possibility that somebody else or even some other party may have a good idea, as good or better than our own." That's a lot.
That seems very narcissistic.
Because he thinks he is the guy to get it done, and he doesn't believe in the other candidates.
So, what's the point of jumping in the race if you aren't going to differentiate yourself from other candidates?
Exactly.
That sounds like what he's saying.
Campaign.
Like, that's the point of a campaign. Like, look, I think these policies will set the country up well.
This is my way. This is my platform. This is the way I view what this country has to do.
This is my plan. Essentially, that's what you get involved in politics for, because you have a plan.
And you think your way is the best.
Yeah, and having a plan doesn't inherently mean all other plans are whack.
Yes.
That's kind of what he's
that you think your way is the best thing for this country and for the people of this country.
You know what that sounds like?
Nothing.
It basically sounds like some centrist type talk.
Of course it does, yeah. Hey, everybody's, they're breaking off into camps, it's my way or no way. And you're going to be the same. You're going to, you're the way you handle yourself throughout your campaign, which I, for one, believe is going to be short. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But the way he really handles himself throughout his campaigning, he's going to say that, yeah, I think this is the best way to do things. I think this is the best way to do things. And when he's asked a question about something like Medicare for all, guess what he's going to say? I don't think that's the best way to do things. this progressive idea, I don't think that's the way our country needs to go. So how are you different than anybody else that's in the race?
Because incidentally, by saying that, he's going to have his own idea.
Please, whatever, man. Michael Bloomberg has not officially got in yet, but it's expected that he will.
These mugs, man.
All right. Trump. A little bit of Trump news. Again, we're not going to go heavy into this, but Trump experienced some losses recently, and that's not attributed to these impeachment inquiry hearings. Even though I think he suffered a big L on
the first day
on Wednesday. Yeah.
On the first day.
But yeah, Trump is asking the Supreme Court to intervene to block a ruling from a 3-judge panel on the Second Circuit, allowing New York City prosecutors to obtain 8 years of his financial records, including his tax returns. So 4 Supreme Court justices have to agree to take this case, before I guess this ruling from this 3-judge panel goes into effect. So we don't know.
They don't have to take it either.
They don't have to take it. So we don't know if they will or if they won't. So it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be on them. Now there's another case as well on Wednesday in Washington. On Wednesday in Washington D.C., a federal appeals court said that House Democrats on the House Oversight Committee can obtain Trump's financial records from his tax preparer Mazars. So Trump's lawyers have already indicated that they intend to file an appeal or appeal that decision to the Supreme Court as well. So 2 different rulings, both dealing with his financial records, his tax returns, and I guess the Supreme Court has a decision to make on whether to take these cases.
I can't remember which one of the rulings this was, but in one of the rulings, one of the judges that kind of handed this ruling down, or one of the judges that was a part of this group of judges, was Merrick Garland.
That was the D.C. case.
The D.C. case.
Yeah, that was the D.C. case. You see how that works?
See how that works.
You see how that works, man. So, I guess it just depends on if the Supreme Court does take the case. And if they do, it is assumed that an actual ruling won't be made until like the summer of 2020. So either we have a decision shortly, or this can extend into the summer months next year. So we'll keep you abreast of any news on that front. Also, very tragic news today. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this, but in Santa Clarita, California, there was another school shooting. So it left 2 students dead, a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. And of course, multiple students were injured as well. The shooter apparently or reportedly shot himself in the head. But at least as of this broadcast, I haven't seen that he has died. The reports is that he is in grave condition, quote, grave condition. They did say that it was an Asian male. I didn't see any reporting on whether he was connected to the school or not, whether he was a current or former student. I have no idea. Nothing on his motivation or anything like that. Excuse me, but Santa Clarita is about 40 miles north of LA, Los Angeles. So, like I said, I don't have a lot of details on it. Like I said, it's very tragic that 2 young people, not just young people, but just 2 humans were gunned down and, lives ended.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter like the age, but it does kind of like when they're that young.
Yeah, it has a different kind of
feel.
Because these are kids that haven't even had a chance to grow up, experience life as an adult. It has a certain sting to it,
And it's not even I wasn't even talking about the victims. I'm just talking about the perpetrator too. Like, he was young.
Well, I don't know how old he is.
Oh, I already was young.
Oh, okay. I don't know how old he was.
But I don't think he was like, I don't even know if he was 21, but I don't know. That was just speculation. But if he is that young, as far as what I've read so far, I'm just curious as to what's going on in that dude's life. You know what I'm saying?
But, of course, we know that this is the American way of life. Seems to be at least several school shootings every single year, and this is just the latest one, and not just, you know, kind of going past school shootings. This is the latest mass shooting, which mass shootings happen everywhere. So unfortunate. Of course, we want something to be done, but it doesn't seem like anything's gonna be done anytime soon. So I don't really know what to say about that, you know. I really don't know what to say. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna set this up for calls. Hopefully, we will not have any technical difficulties this time. Don't really know what brought about the technical difficulties the last show, but you know, I guess it's just trial and error at this point. I don't know. Let's see. My mind is somewhere else.
Oh yeah, Jordan.
Oh yeah, man.
We gotta mention this, man.
Well, we gotta throw a big shout out
Yeah.
to Duke of Bread now.
Well,
He's
has-
evolved to Duke of Bread.
He's
Jordan.
Duke of Bread in the chat.
Jordan, man, took a look
Yeah, man.
at that fire you put out on YouTube.
We heard
man.
your track, man. The beat was fat. The beat was fire, man.
Dude, I must say, okay, look, man, nothing but love for you, Jordan, okay? Nothing but love for you, right? But I was not confident that this was gonna be good.
Yeah, true that. I was going into it like, man, this joint
Yeah.
like, what?
I was like, oh man. I mean, I
don't
know
know,
this
man.
is our
I
boy.
know, man.
I don't want to have to get online, you know,
I
get on
wasn't-
and be like, yeah,
you know,
it was kind of good,
I
man.
was going into it with low hopes. You know, you go into some high hopes.
I was a little
like-
apprehensive again about coming on the show and Jordan be like, hey, you heard it? Nah,
man. We ain't got to it yet.
Nah,
Because I would have definitely lied. You know what I'm saying? If you would have asked, I'd be like, nah, man, I ain't heard this shit.
No. So he said, no, I know I'm bad at rapping. You know what? There's one critique I have for you, okay? You should have talked up, man. You should have spoke up. It was
man.
kind of low. But, yo, the flow was nice. I think the flow was right. The beat was fire. The beat was absolute fire. The lyrics were not bad. They were funny.
From the jump.
Yeah.
He
Made sense.
He was banging on Trump, like, at the beginning. He said, orange clown, little hands with a lip dick. I was like, God dang, man. Shit, like, how you gonna start it off like that?
Yo.
I'm like, God.
I'm telling you, if nobody, or if anybody in the chat, anybody, you know, watching this, if you're on YouTube, especially, if you have not already heard Jordan's track, this beat of fire,
I say cut him some slack because he is like, you know, I would say like, he's not an amateur, but he's just a regular dude trying to like.
Yeah. I'm not saying that
he got no like. What digital audio workspace did you use? Was it FL Studio, Logic Pro, Ableton Live? What'd you use?
Yeah. I mean, we ain't out here saying that like this dude is Jay-Z now, this dude is Nas. You know what I'm saying? No, nobody's saying that. But it was not bad. It was not bad whatsoever. The beat, like I said, the beat was professional as hell. I don't know where you got the beat from. I don't know if you made that beat, whatever. The beat was tight.
Like, I'm not gonna compare it to something like studio made stuff. You know what I'm saying?
You talking about the beat?
Oh, no.
Oh, you
like,
mean just the
yeah,
flow of the
just
lyrics
the flow.
on that.
And
Okay, yeah,
lyrics.
no,
for what it was.
Yeah, for what it was.
Just for what it was. Just for what it was. I'm not hating on it at all.
Compared to the MAGA challenge?
Yeah.
There's no
And you
comparison.
know what?
There's no comparison.
And maybe
comparison.
maybe going into it, we had already heard all that stuff.
Yeah, so I like I said, I was a little apprehensive. Like, damn, okay, Jordan doing something. Okay, all right, okay. I don't know, man. I don't know. But it was not embarrassing whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, there's
Like,
nothing to be embarrassed about. It was actually pretty good.
And you don't have the benefit of, you know, a big studio. And not just rappers, but musicians in general, but rappers in particular, they use a lot of different types of effects on their voice to make it have more impact. They do like a doubling and tripling. I know Waka Flocka does that. That's what gives his voice the impact.
Right.
It's like it's almost like a.
He said he used Audacity.
See, that's why. Audacity is like the free one. So yeah, that sounds pretty good considering you use Audacity. Audacity ain't bad. You can do a lot with Audacity.
Where'd you get the beat from though? Where'd you get the beat from? You ain't gotta say like who the beat is or whatever like that. I mean, if you didn't make the beat, but nah, it was actually pretty good, man. It was actually pretty good.
I mean, you could if I can apply some effects to it, I can make your voice sound a little better. You know, you could double your voice, make it have more impact. Maybe apply a reverb to it.
He said that was a free beat.
Free beat. That was
Damn,
tight.
that shit was tight, man. Straight up. Yeah. We ain't saying this
Like-
just because Jordan is our man over here.
Yeah,
you
and
know
like
what I'm saying?
and like you said, speak up. Like
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like
That's
you
what
got,
I would. Yeah,
you
I
got-
would say
think you
speak
got,
up.
You
man,
got the.
it would have been nice.
The foundation is good, but man, if
Yeah.
you had like the benefit of like just even like the cheapest digital audio workspace, it could probably sound a lot better.
Yeah, man. Props to Jordan, man.
Maybe
Straight up.
maybe come up with some like ad libs. You know, you're.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not gonna, because we could do some, a little bit of more news. We don't have anybody in the queue right now to put on the airwaves or whatever. But honestly, look, a lot of my time today, and of course yesterday, was going through a lot of this testimony and cutting videos and stuff. And then, of course, it was earlier today that the news of that shooting at the school came out. It was about 11 o'clock Eastern time today. So it was, I guess, right as soon as they got to school, maybe, or shortly after in California, about 8 o'clock. I couldn't go into it, man. For some reason I couldn't do it today, man. Like I said, I saw notifications, I saw a little bit of news, but I couldn't do it today, man. It's like sometimes it's too much, man.
Sometimes I will purposely ignore stuff until I'm ready to deal with it later in the day. You know what I'm saying? Depending on where I'm at in my mind in that particular moment, man.
I couldn't do it today, man. Straight up. Couldn't do it.
Yeah, I tell you what, this was interesting. I actually I was at the house listening to the hearing, and I had to go, to get my tire checked, and they had it on TV, and I was there. That's where I watched most of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, dude. They just happened to have a TV there, and I watched a lot of it there. But yeah, I was rapping with some of the people that was in the waiting room. It was just 3 random people. I never met them before, and they were saying they were saying some of the same stuff we were saying, man. It's just crazy, man. Talking about Trump, but
I think most people are kind of seeing, or you know what? I can't say most people. I would only say I hope most people, and I would like to believe that most people are seeing things the right way. Because we're not trying to fool nobody. Like the fooling is going on the Republican side. The attempt to fool people is going on because of President Trump. We're not trying to fool anybody. I don't even think the Democratic Party, for what it's worth right now, doesn't seem like they're trying to fool anybody.
And it doesn't matter, like hypocrisy doesn't matter in this case, or whether the Democrats truly respect whistleblowers doesn't matter in this case. Why? Because I don't contribute to DNC causes, whether rhetorically or monetarily.
Right, me either.
So I mean, it's like what you think of Democrats, and like who is a hypocrite and who is not, and who is genuine, and who really they don't really respect whistleblowers. Okay, maybe that's true.
Yeah,
that could be very well.
It could be very
well
true.
Be true.
Right.
Maybe they might try to cover. Maybe they might try to cover up if they were in the same situation. But we don't have.
Yeah.
We don't have something.
We
similar.
got to deal with what we have right now.
We got to deal with what we have right now.
That's it, man. That's why I say, man, don't make this about your feelings about the Democratic Party or about different Democratic representatives. Don't make it about that, because it's not about that. I don't even care about their motivations. Certain people are saying, well, they're doing this because they don't think they can win in 2020. Let's say if they do believe that. I don't care. Does it change the fact? Does it change what President Trump did? No. All I'm concerned with is what President Trump and his goons try to do. That's all I'm concerned with.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because Tebrate said definitively and asserted that, this is something that all presidents do. I'm like, maybe Tebrate is reducing what Trump did. The only way you can say something like that is if you reduce what Trump did, or whether you limit what Trump did, or just completely ignore what Trump did. I don't recall any other president using their personal attorney to create a back channel in which was facilitated by two crooks.
But see, again, maybe we just didn't know about it.
Like,
just didn't know
we're
about
just assuming that like it's Giuliani facilitating this, but you know, it was two essentially crooks who donated to a Trump PAC.
Illegally.
I mean, can you cite another president involved in activity like that?
It's just the suggestion.
Involved in a call like that? I really.
But what he's saying is that it's just the suggestion that this kind of behavior has taken place before, even though you don't have any proof to back it up. It's kind of just throwing it out there, like this seems like that type of corruption that has always existed. But again, if you don't have evidence of that, if it was never brought up before, if there was no effort to actually make those responsible for that type of corruption accountable for their actions, I can't do nothing about that.
We can't do nothing
about that, man. But this case right here, like, this is out in the open. There was an actual whistleblower, and like, you know, we've said before, people want to protect whistleblowers, right? Well, the whistleblower kind of revealed what was going on, and then other information came forward. Other people that were involved in these efforts came forward, and now they're telling their story.
Yeah, it's like
that's all I'm concerned with, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you have a certain kind of affinity and a certain respect for whistleblowers, you should go about the situation based on not how other people may view whistleblowers or how they may treat whistleblowers if they were in the same predicament. That's called being objective. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's really irrational to allow like maybe a bias to justify something and being for someone, but it's just as bad to allow a bias against someone or something or some party to shape your opinion about something. You still have to be objective, even if you're biased against, let's say in this case, the Democratic Party. That doesn't mean I have to look at information differently because I have a bias against them. That's just as bad as justifying someone's behavior if you have a bias for them. It just doesn't make any sense. Like,
yo, Jordan. Well, Jordan's saying that he might re-record it because he said this was a one-take thing. Which, yo,
oh word, it was a
that was a one-take thing, man. Straight up, props. But hey, look, we'll put you on. If you want to re-record it, we'll put you on. I ain't want to just put it out there without, like, you know, you saying it's okay. If you don't want me to, if you don't want us to do it, we won't. But if you cool with it, I'll put it out there. Yeah, we'll put it out there. Show everybody, some of your skills.
Random stuff. Since we're talking about rapping, I always pictured Lisa like sounding like Queen Latifah. No, that's some random shit because we talking about rapping. I always picture that's how she sounds, like old Queen Latifah. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like a mix between Queen Latifah and Missy Elliott. That's why I would.
Queen still sound the same, really.
What? She sound the same. Yeah, that's how like maybe some yo-yo, maybe yo-yo, like a mix of those three. That's how I picture Lisa would rap. With a little bit of MC Light mixed in.
MC.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm going back.
Money in the middle with it.
What
hold on.
No, that was Money Love.
That was Money Love.
Money Love.
MC Light. Yeah, okay, my bad. I like Money Love, man. Straight up. That was my jam right there.
But like one takeaway from these hearings, I guess one thing that was clear to me from not the hearings but the two witnesses. Never mind. We got a call. I don't want to start talking. We got a call.
All right, so let's get to this. This is from the 832 area code. Fingers crossed that this will actually come through and you'll be able to hear it. All right, so caller, you're on the air live. No, you can't be heard.
No complaints.
All right, just hold on. Just hold on one moment, and then we'll get the audio. We'll get this straightened out. We gotta just go through the other route. All right, bam. All right, there we go. Let's see. Let's put this up. Oh, yeah, sorry. All right, go ahead, caller.
You hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. So who's this?
Okay, good. Yeah, this is Mark.
Mark. All right. Nice to hear from you, Mark.
What's up, guys?
Not much, man.
Yeah, we called y'all before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you think about the irony of during all of the investigations, Trump in the background hiding and acting like he was ignoring it. And meanwhile, has Erdogan from Turkey into the White House. Pure dictator.
Yep.
You know,
Ah.
buddying up with the world's dictators.
Right.
So are you saying that's an irony because this whole Ukrainian ordeal has to do with Trump supposedly trying to tackle corruption, yet he's engaging in a press conference, a very cordial press conference, and a cordial press conference after he was on the phone with Erdogan and striking what we think is a deal to kill and ethnically cleanse the Kurds. Is that why you're saying it's ironic? Because he is actually with somebody corrupt.
Right on the head.
Yeah. So you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't even thinking about that.
No.
That makes me think of another situation. That makes me think of Saudi Arabia, because we have a situation where Mohammed bin Salman pretty much ordered the killing of a journalist and chopped this mug up. And Trump's response to that was what? Hey, they pay us, we give them money. So it's like, if he was really... Go ahead.
The hypocrisy is as deep as it can possibly get. You know what I mean? Let's see here. Buddy up with Putin, buddy up with Kim Jong-un, buddy up with Erdogan, alienate allies. I mean, just those facts alone, everybody can argue about the ridiculous idiocy of Trump to no end. But honestly, those are things where he is literally endangering the United States.
Yeah, I agree. Seeing him with Erdogan yesterday was that was definitely a sight. Like you were talking about, and just knowing what happened with the Kurds, that whole situation, it's just so interesting. This is a guy that wants to tackle corruption, and you know, corruption is all around him. You know, Marie Yovanovitch, the former ambassador of Ukraine, was actually involved in tackling corruption in Ukraine. And instead of leaving her in her position to do what she is supposed to do, he let this smear campaign, no, he probably directed it, but he really implemented his own type of corruption into Ukraine, somewhere that is just famous for corruption, infamous for corruption, going back years and years and years. And so, man, that's just
definitely
that's some kind of evil, you know, because here you have a new president and a government that seems like they're trying to do the right thing. Seems like they're actually trying to get rid of the corruption in their country. And here you have Trump trying to bust everything up.
Yep. You know, and he wants everybody out of the Middle East, but don't mind selling record number of arms to Saudi Arabia.
That's true.
Or backing, you know, Israel with billions.
I mean, look, the only people that don't know this to this point are intentionally
People
blind.
don't want to know.
Yeah, they're
You just
intentionally,
don't want to know.
willfully ignorant of these issues now, and what they're seeing. If they're believing the narratives of these Republicans, the way they're hearing them, you know, questioning these, you know, these witnesses and just giving them their own commentary. If they're believing this crap, there's no saving them.
Well, I think you guys are savvy. You know, we all know what the reality is. The reality is a scarier thing than we can prove these things all day long and show facts. The scary reality is that there are that many people in the United States that would back him and don't care if he's wrong.
Yep.
And in their mentality, one of the parts of the hypocrisy, I believe, is, you know, the words Trump uses in his mind. Okay, well, I don't agree with this type of corruption, so I'm going to stamp it out, even if it's illegal. That is exactly what dictators do. That is exactly their mindset. That is what Erdogan thinks. That's what every dictator there is.
That's why he respects those people.
Right, and I'm going to use all means necessary, legal or not, to get my way because this is what I want. And if Biden was guilty or not, this is totally illegal.
Right.
Yeah.
Directing people to not participate, that's illegal.
Right.
And we're sitting here arguing in this investigation, did this even occur? Oh, I don't know. I think it didn't occur, or it did occur. Oh, but, you know, what we're doing is we're, stomping out this corruption. Well, I thought you said it didn't occur. I mean, it's ridiculous. And the sad part is there are millions of people in this country who will, I don't care, he's right. They're going to just back it. And like he said, he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue. Yeah, he could. And if people would seriously back that and say, well, it's for the greater good, that's a disturbing thing.
And that's
our very scary reality is we have a lot of people who back this idiot. That's terrifying.
That's what's so offensive about this too, and so ridiculous, because the narrative keeps changing, and we heard that during just one session of testimony, because it's always been asserted by these Republicans that, well, I mean, actually, I can't say always, because it has changed, it has shifted. But first of all, there was no quid pro quo, there was no effort to get an announcement of investigations, and then it was like, oh, well, we withheld the money because of corruption. We have to tackle corruption. And then Mick Mulvaney gave that press conference saying, yeah, this happens all the time. There is political influence. We held up the money because, we had to see if there was investigation. I mean, there was corruption. And then now you have, who was that? Jim Jordan at this open hearing now saying that, well, no, you know what? The money was held up because we had to vet the president of Ukraine. It had nothing to do with an investigation into CrowdStrike or Joe Biden, even though we heard that on the call, even though Republicans have been selling that idea ever since this thing started. But now it was about seeing if Zelensky was real or not. Man,
I just don't even understand why they're even trying to even debate that this happened or not. Trump flat out admitted it almost instantly.
That's true.
So it's like, I can't believe that they're even trying to throw in the tune that, oh, this wasn't mentioned or this wasn't discussed that way. It's like Trump immediately defended himself and doubled down like it was right and there was nothing wrong with it because it's for the greater good.
Yep.
Oh, so and then they want to argue, oh, no, that didn't happen like that. That didn't happen. Or maybe it did. Oh, but if it did, it's for the greater good. It's unbelievable.
But then if it was actually for the greater good, then the greater good didn't occur because the aid was released without anything being done.
Exactly.
So it doesn't.
Exactly. And you know what? I will say that these investigations, it was beautiful to watch. It really was, because it was pretty much no bullshit. There was no. They were nailing him.
Yeah, they were.
Nobody was aiming to nail him. It's just you bring out the obvious common sense facts.
Right. Obvious common sense.
Fucking hell. I don't think anybody in their right mind can deny that.
And see, and this is one thing, a significant, I guess, criticism of these proceedings is that, well, the Republicans aren't going to vote to remove him from office. So why you even do this? This is going to come back on the Democratic Party. It's going to hurt them, blah, blah, blah. No. I don't care what the Republicans do, actually.
Disagree.
I don't care.
I even disagree with that.
Yeah, I don't see, at this point, I'm not, I guess, convinced that the Republican Party will not vote to
We already
remove him
know
from
that
office.
they won't
I know
vote
it's
that
kind of
way.
a thought that would hurt the Democratic Party, but honestly, if he does pull this trump card, pun intended, and act like he's going to pardon himself or get his buddies to keep him out, I truly think that will just be more damage to his own party, not the Democrats.
See, and that
if he gets away with it,
that's
people
what I'm
are going
saying.
to say, well, I guess they were right. And they're going to say, I can't believe this guy is getting away with even more. This guy needs to get out.
That's what I'm. See, look, I will say that at this point, I'm not convinced that the Republican Party, the senators in the Republican Party, will not vote or won't vote to remove from office. Look, I think it's probable that they won't vote to remove from office, but I think anything is possible because we have only been through one day of testimony. A lot of other things are going to be, outed, and this might really shift the way the Republicans view the scenario. But if they don't vote to remove him from office, I still want them on record as having to defend that guy and defending this crime. I want that in the history books. So if nothing else comes from this, I want them on record doing that.
I don't know if you kind of even picked up on that in some of the investigation inquiries today, but it looked like some of that was exactly for that. They were laying it out, the groundwork, as in, we just want to get this right for the record books. And I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah. It is, man. And look, we've only been through one day, and even though Jim Jordan was saying that, hey, you two are the star witnesses. Taylor, you're the star witness. Nah, I don't know if there is one single star witness, but actually, maybe Sondland, maybe Sondland may be the star witness. I'm not sure, but there are multiple people. That's gonna be rough. Yeah, that's gonna be rough for Sondland.
And his main take was the whole "this didn't happen" approach.
Yeah,
which was so ridiculous because Trump admitted it immediately.
Yeah.
It's astonishing to watch him even pull this kind of shit. But like I said, it doesn't matter. Anybody with half a fucking brain knows what the fuck is going on.
Mm-hmm.
The far scarier part of this is there are that many people in America who support somebody that's fucking. It's a sad reality, a shocking reality that many people in America would die for a ridiculous cause.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unbelievable to most people in America, I believe. But see, I'm down in the South too. It's ridiculous down here, man. I'll tell you what. I'm just surrounded by Trump goers all day, and it's embarrassing. You can't argue logic with them.
No.
I give up. I just don't even care to even incorporate with them. There's just no.
Yeah,
there's no logic there.
Well, because that at this point, if they're still riding with them, then there's no turning back at this point. So.
Oh yeah, there is no. Yeah. It's not like they need to be proved or say, look, see, he's this. It doesn't matter. It's a point. They're trying to. It's an ideology they want to push.
Yep.
It's disgusting, but
in the face of
I don't
whatever,
know. I just
doesn't matter.
I hope better for America in the future. And I really do think that Bernie is our only choice. I really do. I think anybody else that gets in, it'll be corporatists or business as usual. And I really hope Warren doesn't screw it up for him. But
Mark, are you telling me? Are you telling me that you're not feeling Deval Patrick? You're not telling me that you're not feeling Deval Patrick, are you?
No, I'm a Bernie supporter the whole way. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Because he's out there, man.
All right.
You can flip to him. If
He
you
needs
want.
support,
You know what
man.
I'm saying,
I'm just saying, man.
Much needed.
Beginning of his campaign, I was just throwing that out there. I don't know.
Well, you know what? I think a lot of people just pretty much have their minds made up at this point. It's pretty much you hate Trump or you don't hate Trump. At this point, with whoever gets up there, I just think that the only real hope for America, in any kind of true sense, is with Bernie.
Yeah.
We have a hope of defeating Trump in a couple of options, and that's great. But I just think that Trump is just symbolic of a problem in America. And I'll tell you what, Trump is bad. Trump supporters are worse. Because all he is just pandering to a base, and that is those people. If we can't fix that mentality, we're on a bad course.
That is a very apt way of kind of explaining it. Trump is definitely a problem. He's a demagogue. We know he's a bigot. He's a racist. He's a xenophobe. All of this. But people are always the problem. Just individual people. If people are able to support something like that, this is the problem. Because that's only one guy. If all of these people actually, are supporting whatever he stands for, oh man, that's a significant issue.
It's sick. It is very sick. Well, hey, man, I'll let you guys get on, and I want you to know I really do appreciate you guys' show. Honestly, you are my favorite news source. Love you guys, and been watching y'all. When the election night happened, I was there with y'all the whole ride.
Oh, really? Man, that was like 8 hours or so?
Because we started when most other news organizations, major news organizations, started their election coverage like at 6, 7 o'clock.
Was it 6 hours? 8?
No, we went to like 3 o'clock.
Damn, that jump was long.
We went like 9 hours.
My
we went
gosh.
from like 6 p.m.-ish, 7 p.m.-ish to like 3:30.
Yep, I was there the whole night. It was great. It was an event.
Wow. I remember going into that thinking like, what the hell are we gonna say for like 6 hours.
Really didn't have any. I mean, we didn't have no. We just had our general, like, I guess, our own general knowledge about, the candidates and what we thought about them. Spitballing. We didn't know whether we were going to have 9 hours of.
Well, look, I will say this: if Trump does make it to re-election, well, not re-election, but if he makes it to election day and he's a candidate for president, we're gonna have a lot. I mean, I have purposely kept a list of things concerning Trump. So, we're gonna have a lot to go over.
It'd be a daunting task because I started going through my notes and I was like, good grief.
My goodness, every day, man.
Endless material.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever he did this entire fiasco, I honestly got to where I had to question, is he doing this shit on purpose?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of a fucking moron would get out of this investigation with Russia and the Mueller report and act like he won when he didn't, and literally go do this with Ukraine? It's like, nobody's that stupid, or maybe they are.
You got to remember his mentality. What's his mentality?
On purpose.
Remember, his mentality is that of a businessman that has authoritarian control over everything. And so he always touts his business acumen, but I don't think he adjusted, like the framework in which he has to operate. You know what I'm saying? Because this is not the same. This is not his business. There's checks and balances that come along with this position. As a president, you have to adjust yourself to those checks and balances. You're not just, call the shots on everything.
Sole decision maker.
Sole decision maker. And I think that's what he thinks he is. And quite frankly, even though he touts himself, I don't think he's ever been the sole decision maker. He's been the one to point the fingers for other people to do stuff. So even him as a
I think he's too stupid to really know what's going on at all. I really don't think he has a clue.
He doesn't.
When people really pin him to any kind of world event, he seems like, fourth grade mentality. He has no idea. He just has outside people, and he just rambles in it with his hateful fourth grade.
He's the type of person that
vocabulary.
He's the type of person that wants power with no responsibility. He just wants to be king and everybody else.
He wants to direct it.
He wants to direct everything,
Yeah.
regardless whether he knows what he's doing or not. He just wants to be
There's
the man
a
out
lot of
front.
neurological words for these things.
Yeah.
Megalomania.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Lots of explanations of people like this. Just sadly, he's made it to where he is.
But
one of my favorite things to ask any Trump supporter: do you think he lies? But are you going to really tell me he doesn't? Does he lie? Oh, but you support it. Why?
Hey.
It's just unbelievable.
Mark. Nikki Haley says he doesn't lie. Nikki Haley says he doesn't lie, man. She's always had truthful conversations with him. Okay, she's always had honest conversations with him. So, I mean, be careful what you say, Mark.
Hey, funny, you were talking about this Nixon that Jordan made earlier. I swear to God, I was fucking with your podcast all day yesterday, sampling it and chopping it.
Oh, really?
And I was going to upload some crazy thing I made for you guys. But I didn't know he made some crazy song. I didn't even hear what he did.
Yeah, man, it was pretty good. It's pretty good, man.
Yeah. Y'all send a link online or something, and I'll check it out.
Well, if you look, that Duke of Bread, all you gotta do is click on his profile right in the chat, and it'll take you right to it. He only got one video on there.
Duke of Bread?
Yeah, Duke of Bread.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that. Well, you guys keep it up, and I'll send you guys whatever I sampled to chop together for you, just for Jordan.
Okay.
And I'm loving it. Keep it up, guys.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you calling in, and always appreciate your support, man. Appreciate it. I already said that.
Yeah, no problem.
3 times.
Nice.
All right. You have a good weekend, man. All right. Very good hearing from Mark, man. That was a very productive conversation. Good to hear people's, not, I don't care if it's a different take or the same take, but I like to hear their way of communicating it. So definitely enjoy having calls. I was just looking at some news a few minutes ago. I saw that Trump, I guess obviously he was in Louisiana today, because we've told you, well, I think we told you last week that the election is on Saturday for governor in Louisiana. And the Republicans think they have a chance to, take the seat, take that seat away from, who's the governor right now?
We talked about it before.
John Bell Edwards? John Bell, is it John Bell? I can't remember his name. John Bell, is it John Bell? Yeah, John Bell Edwards.
Yeah.
John Bell Edwards. I had it right. I think I said it right.
Yeah, you said it.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so they think they have a chance to take that seat away from him. They can win that election. There was already an earlier, contest in October, but nobody got the majority of votes. So now that's why there's a runoff contest. It being on Saturday is weird for me. I don't think unless it just kind of like, it was something I wasn't paying attention to, but that the election is on Saturday is weird, I think, unless it's normal in some places. I don't know, but I've never seen that before. But anyway, Trump, I believe, was in Louisiana today, and I saw, this is I saw a notification, a headline saying Trump knocks testimony from never Trumpers at Louisiana rally. I just want to mention that because, again, we've talked about these people that are testifying, and many of them are lifelong Republicans. Some of them you don't even know what their political affiliation is because they serve at the pleasure of any president that's in office, So, and it seems as though their job doesn't really have like a partisan approach. They're really just trying to do their job. I mean, of course, some of their thoughts may not be something that we agree with, but still, I don't know that it lines up with, this is a Democrat and this is a Republican, whatever. But anyway, these two people that testified yesterday, Ambassador Bill Taylor and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State George Kent, they were asked a question during the hearing if they were never Trumpers. And I thought that was really ridiculous that they even had to be asked the question. And I'm not blaming the individual that questioned them, because it was Representative Eric Swalwell, who was a Democratic presidential candidate some months back. But he did ask him if they were, either of them, if they were never Trumpers. And like I said, I just felt it was ridiculous that they had to even respond to that, because of course, the suggestion is out there that these are people that just have it in for Donald Trump. They have some kind of bias against Donald Trump simply because they're coming forward with their story. It's just so ridiculous that that's where we are, and people actually like play into that type of narrative. They're saying things. They're not even saying bad things about the president.
Yeah.
They're saying bad things. They're saying things about their own experience and things that concern them.
And they've been very careful not to kind of speculate anything about what Trump's motives may have been.
Right. They're not opinionated.
Yeah,
they're not really opinionated.
Yeah, that was one major thing that stood out with these two witnesses, Kent and Taylor. They seem very aware of their role in the hearings as just fact witnesses and nothing else. Their job wasn't to come to conclusions,
right,
or make speculations outside of their own experience.
Right.
And they just seem to be very aware of that.
There was nothing about what Trump is advancing in U.S. policy or anything like that. Like the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, did they agree with it? Nothing about that. Nothing about any particular policy that they disagreed with or agreed with. They're just trying to do their job.
They're not.
Something happened in which they're like, well, hold on, this is not regular.
Yeah, it didn't matter, whether it was a Democrat asking the questions or a Republican asking the questions. They seemed very, not just apprehensive, but they seemed to be very opposed to diving down rabbit holes with them. Again, no matter who asked them the question.
Yeah.
Because I think we didn't play this clip, there was an instance where a Democratic congressman, I think his name was Raja Krishnamurthy.
Right, that was towards the end.
Towards the end. Seemed like he was fishing for additional crimes involving the same irregular back channel tactics. but happening elsewhere, like in other countries. It sounded like he was trying to get Taylor and Kent to say it could be going on, but they didn't even want to speculate whether it could be going on. It doesn't matter, like whether, I'm not going to say even something could be going on just because it's going on in this instance. They didn't even want to go there.
Not at all.
Now, I don't think the questions were completely inappropriate on the surface, because I think the primary objective was reached. Because by asking those questions, I think he gets Taylor and Kent to assert that they can't think of any other country where Giuliani was engaging in the same type of behavior. I think that was the point of the questioning. I didn't like where it went, but I understand the primary objective, and that's where it was. I was like, have you ever seen anything like this before? And is Giuliani doing this anywhere else? Why this country? So I think that's a situation where quite possibly they were just fishing and knew they wouldn't get an answer and not really beside themselves and just trying to
He was putting it out there.
frame everything like, hey, this is Giuliani's not doing this anywhere else. Why here?
A lot again, and we've said this. A lot of the commentary that you're going to hear from the members of the committee are going to be rhetorical questions, and they're going to be questions that they know that the witnesses cannot answer, but they're trying to lay the foundation. They're trying to throw the information out there so that it gets people actually thinking like, hey, maybe that, okay, I'm connecting to that myself based on what this, representative has said. Yeah, that makes sense right there. Even though most of these witnesses are probably, most if not all of these witnesses are probably not going to jump down that rabbit hole and engage in, yeah, I think that could happen, and yeah, I feel this way, but no. They're really just going to communicate their experience.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, the Republican Congressman John Ratcliffe, who we played some clips of, we didn't play this one, but he asked Ken and Taylor, was there anything in President Trump's July 25th call that was impeachable? Neither of them said yes, nor should they have. But people were retweeting that fact. Ratcliffe asked if anything in Trump's call was impeachable, and they didn't answer. I'm like,
is it on them to determine what's impeachable?
No, no, it's not. It's not. They shouldn't have answered that question. They were there to testify on what they knew and what was going on, not opine about impeachment. You know what I'm saying? They are in the business of legality. They're just there to present facts as fact witnesses. And they even said that. They said it isn't their job to determine what's impeachable. They said this. So it kind of high points the idea of how nonpartisan and neutral they wanted to be in all this.
Look, it's going to continue to be a shit show, and that's on the Republican front. They're going to continue doing whatever they can to distract viewers from the truth. That's the only thing they can do. The talking points are going to be familiar. They're going to be consistent. As Representative Elise Stefanik said, there's two facts that never change. Ukraine received the aid and no investigation was announced. I do agree that those are two facts. I do agree. Yep. We can say the same thing. But there are contradicting ideas. Because Ukraine got the money after the aid was withheld. The reason it was withheld, not I told you it was because
Donald Trump, Mulvaney, other Republicans?
Yes. It was because of corruption. It was because there were some things that happened in Ukraine concerning the 2016 election and the Bidens. That's why the money was held up. I didn't say that. Trump said that. Mulvaney said that. Actually, I can't remember which, I think it was Representative Chris Stewart. He said it as well. He said, hey, no one is immune to investigation, even political candidates. So that is asserting that, hey, it was appropriate for President Trump and the administration to hold up the money until we can reach some determination on if something was afoul here. But the problem is that the second point of Representative Stefaniak is saying no investigation was launched. You can't do that. You just can't. You can't make you can't be so irrational and just pass it off as like the gospel. No investigation was launched because the extortion attempt was unsuccessful. By her saying that, by anybody saying, hey, and Representative Jim Jordan said the same thing. No investigation was launched. They got the money without anything being announced.
That makes Trump innocent.
Yes, but by saying that, you're saying that there would have been a problem if President Zelensky actually did get on that CNN platform and announce the investigations. Then it would have been a problem.
So what you're saying is they're flailing because they don't even recognize the implications of their defense.
And see, and what I really need is for members of the Democratic Party and members of these congressional committees, I need them to actually state it as that. Now, like I said, I think Representative Joaquin Castro did the best job. He was the most effective as actually laying it out and comparing it to an attempted robbery, attempted murder. I think he did the best job at that. But I need these, I need these Congress members to say, hey, these Republican talking points, these two facts that they want to just hammer away at, that the money eventually flowed and that no investigation was launched. Here's how this doesn't make sense. At some point, they have to actually explain that to people. They have to actually lay that out so that a witness can answer or not answer, but some way they're going to have to communicate that. It doesn't make sense.
All that corruption that you said existed in Ukraine and needed to be dealt with, it's not going to be dealt with now, right? That's essentially what they're telling us.
Right. So they wanted to tackle corruption, but then they released the money, and now, hey, I guess the corruption is allowed to stand because you didn't do anything about it. They have to make these points, and they have to make them in a very convincing way. They have, and I know we've already seen it yesterday, how they're doing it like elementary school. They're like really spelling this thing out. They're taking their time with it. And I applaud that effort. But like I say, you got to go all the way. You have to really get at the heart of the ridiculousness of the Republican defense. You have to get at that. You have to squash it into the ground.
So the non-conspiracy theory version of the GOP's impeachment defense are what? They released the aid.
Mm-hmm.
Obama didn't do enough for Ukraine.
Yes.
And there's systematic
because
corruption.
Obama.
So yeah, because Obama. So Obama didn't do enough.
Uh-huh.
And then there's systematic corruption in Ukraine.
Right.
And then the aid was released.
Yep.
Those
without an announcement.
Of investigation. Thank you for completing that for me.
Yes.
So those are the non-conspiracy defense tactics.
Yes.
And they're bad. They may just, you know what? They just may need to stick to conspiracy theory.
Guys, man. All right, we're gonna get out of here pretty soon. Yo, Jason from Detroit is in the house.
Oh,
man.
snap, man!
Yo,
what up, man?
I just had added him on Twitter because I seen him. Because I was thinking, I was like, yo, man, I haven't seen Jason, man, in a long time, man. But yeah, he added me back. Good to see you out here, man.
I like how it's. That's the first comment we saw. We don't know if you commented.
I know, yeah.
Above, I don't see it, but. That's a good opening comment.
Yeah, man.
Fuck Deval Patrick.
He said, I lost $66 because he decided the president. Where's delusion?
You know what? I guess you were underestimating like how egotistical and narcissistic he was.
Oh, guys, man. That's funny, man. That's funny. All right. Thank you to our caller tonight, Mark, and then also thank you to our super chatter, Gear Randon, always out there with the support for LTMB, always showing up. We appreciate you, Gear. And I hope I hope I'm saying that right. I've been saying Gear for the whole time. This whole time, I wonder if I'm busting it up, man. Gear's gonna have to let us know. Maybe sometime, man. I hope I'm not busting your name up, man.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's like G.
It could be Gaillard.
It could be G.
It could be. Yeah, it could be a Jason.
Jason.
I don't know. But anyway, we hope that you got something from this broadcast. We like to break stuff down, and we try to do that in depth. And, we usually do that with a lot of videos. We usually do that with the debates. These hearings are most likely going to go the same way. Tomorrow, like we said, the former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, is going to be testifying. So we will deal with that, on the next show on Tuesday. Of course, there's going to be some testimony to next week as well. Then also the debate, the next Democratic debate is on Wednesday, I believe. I believe it's on Wednesday.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because then that'll be the show on Thursday.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I believe it's on Wednesday. I'm pretty sure it's on Wednesday. I think it starts at 9 p.m. So a lot of stuff to tackle next week. I don't know how many hearings are scheduled for next week. I'll have to look at it.
It's Wednesday, November 20th.
It's Wednesday, okay. But yeah, next week I do believe Sondland is testifying next week. So that's going to be interesting.
Here's what's going to happen.
He's going to be in a public box.
Sondland is
He's going to be in a public box.
I think they're going to focus. My prediction is that they'll focus on why he changed his testimony.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
the Republicans?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. The Republicans will definitely hype that up.
But he's just going to, of course, he's going to say, well, I remember this and I remember that. And then they're going to say he's a never Trumper.
Never Trumper that donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund.
That's right.
That's going to be, I'm pretty sure there are going to be some counters that Democratic Party already have lined up. But I don't know if this is the final schedule that is in stone, but it says Tuesday morning, Jennifer Williams and Alexander Vindman are going to testify.
Vindman is definitely going to be compelling.
And the afternoons, we ain't done on Tuesday.
Oh, really?
No. And Tuesday afternoon,
oh, shit.
Kurt Volker and Tim Morrison.
Good damn.
So there's 4. So 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening. And it says Wednesday morning, Gordon Sondland.
Oh, damn.
And then Wednesday afternoon, Laura Cooper and David Hale.
Hold on. So we got, because I don't know if I've heard of David Hale. I don't know if I've heard of that name.
I haven't heard that name.
But Sondland is definitely key testimony. Laura Cooper is definitely key testimony. And then Wednesday night we have the Democratic presidential debate. Damn.
And then Thursday is Fiona Hill.
Which is key testimony as well. My gosh, man. Next week is going to be crazy, man. Damn.
If it was just 1 or 2 people, maybe even 3, how compelling is that case? But we have over a dozen people who are going to testify, and we might have more to come because they may send out more subpoenas based on like what they know the American people have heard. You know what I'm saying? And they plan on doing it that way.
Yeah.
We might actually hear from the staffers, Taylor staffers as well.
Yeah. Well, well, of course, I believe at some point they will testify in public. The one that has been named, at least that I know that has been named, David Holmes, he's testifying behind closed doors first. And of course, the Republicans are admonishing that and saying, whatever.
But there's a reason why.
Of course.
We already went over why these depositions were taken in behind closed doors.
Yeah, to begin.
Because people can't coordinate their stories.
Right.
You want to keep that under wraps because when a witness comes in, you don't want them to know what other witnesses have said. You want them to be completely truthful. And so that's why Sondland had to change his testimony.
That's right.
Which is interesting. Because me and Will think that they already had this thing set up. Now,
because it played out to it played out to where Sondland had to.
He
had to revise his testimony.
Yeah, because they called him first.
They called him first.
So what that tells me is they already had those other witnesses' testimonies lined up. They already had an understanding with those other witnesses and what those other witnesses were going to say. Now, I don't know for sure whether, I guess the Democrats that are part of these committees knew that Sondland would lie, But I think it was fair to say that he would, based on the testimony that these other witnesses gave, and the fact that he donated $1 million to Donald Trump's inaugural fund. They called him first. He was the first one they took.
That was unlike any of the others.
Unlike any others, and they took his first. So they knew something. So whatever we know and whatever was revealed, even when they were taking the depositions and the summaries were released, from that point to this point, and whatever we know, it's probably just like 1% of 1% of what they already knew before this stuff even started. They already had everything lined up. That's why Sondland was called first. They already knew he was going to lie. They already knew that those other witnesses were going to. They already had what those other witnesses were going to say. They already corroborated all that with those other witnesses before Sondland gave his testimony, and they set it up perfectly. And they set him up because they knew it was going to happen.
He was the most likely to say, "Hey, nothing happened." And if something did happen, I would not be involved. No. There's nothing here. He was the most likely to do that given his financial connection to President Trump. So, like I said, next week is going to be a busy week. Again, on Saturday is the election in Louisiana for governor. So eyes peeled to that. And then, like I said, more testimony next week, the Democratic debate next week. So
that Democratic debate. I want Elizabeth Warren to just, I'm sorry. She's going to have to take it.
Oh, she will.
She's going to have to, I'm talking about take the win. I'm just saying she's going to have to receive a lot of the attention.
Oh, she's going to have to. Yeah, she will. Because we know that healthcare is definitely going to be an issue, and she's going to have to explain her healthcare system or her healthcare proposal, and I don't know that she can do it. Jason from Detroit did chip in, and then he contributed in the super chat. Miss you guys. Hope to be around more often. No doubt, man. We appreciate you being here tonight.
We know you got your own content to create.
Yeah, but I looked at your channel, and I don't think you had uploaded anything in a couple months. Because I did check out your channel. It was either yesterday or today. But yeah, man, we hope that you are around. You call in too, man. Always great to hear your take on things, man. Special shout out to all of our patrons on patreon.com as well. Thank you each and every month for consistently contributing to this platform. Can't tell you how much we appreciate that. If you would like to contribute to the show, just go to patreon.com/LTMB. With that, we're going to bid adieu. Going to get out of here. Get some rest, because I feel like next week is going to be hectic.
Yeah, I think I'm going to sleep the whole weekend just so I can.
Thursday, man, I don't even want to think about Thursday. Because, again, we're going to have key testimony to get through, and we're going to have to get through some relevant parts of the Democratic debate, too, and fit that into one show.
I wonder if they're going to receive a question about Deval Patrick and his entry into the race.
I doubt it.
Don't think so?
Nah, I doubt it. Because how would that even go? I doubt it.
Maybe that's just me wanting somebody.
Like, what is going to be his pathway to appearing on stage? Like, don't even answer that question. I don't
think there is a pathway.
I don't think so. Like I said, I think it's going to be short-lived.
3 weeks, a month.
Will he make it to Iowa? Will he make it to Iowa? Because if you're gonna get in the game this late, you are seeing yourself as a big dog. And it's gonna take big dog money. And he might get some big dog money.
And he has the resources.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
He works for.
So maybe he does have what it takes to stay in this race for a minute.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
At least stay in the race as a face.
As a face.
Okay.
Because I don't think the numbers are going to do him well. That's just my take on things. Maybe I'm wrong.
Polling at 0.00001%.
Maybe he makes just this miraculous come up. I don't see it happening, but whatever. Damn, Lisa. Warren is Howdy Doody's little sister.
Wow.
Damn, that's messed up. Man. Messed up.
That's
Never seen it. I've never heard that before.
That's a reference.
Never heard that association. Yeah. We see you out there, Sharon. Like I said, Lisa, Trev, everybody out here. Jordan, Tanya, Human. Who else is out here, man? Jimmy. I think Jean has gone to bed.
Yeah, Jean's gone to bed.
Jimmy
She said
Joe.
it sounded like she said. I think I read a comment. She said it was raining, so I guess it was hard for her to listen. She was going to listen to the show.
See Schultze in here, Tara Braid. All of you, we appreciate you for sticking with us, and we hope that you will come around next week for our broadcasts. I think they will be very interesting. So with that, we're going to get out of here. Hope everybody has a good weekend, and we'll see you next week. All right. Peace out. You know, Let the Madness Begin has never been so appropriate as of right now. You know, I just want to throw that out there. Never been so appropriate, man. My goodness.
Yeah, because it's been madness.
It's
actually,
been madness, man.
for like his whole presidency. It's only going to get more mad.
My goodness, man.
Madder.
Peace out, everybody.